A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. One of my favorite all-time series ever. This got me into reading. I'm obsessed, which means I have so much to talk to you guys about, and we are gonna deep dive today. This is major spoilers for this specific book, not for the entire series. If you haven't read this book, I am going to be essentially doing a plot review, but it's gonna be more like gossipy. We won't hit all the points in the book, so if you haven't read it, I highly suggest reading it before you watch this video. And then at the end of the video, I will be talking about series spoilers, so we can dive into some of the fun stuff that happens in this book that kind of foreshadows the series. So first, we're gonna spend a majority of this video talking about the plot, spilling tea, gossiping, basically. Then I wanna talk about my feelings and opinions about each character. We're starting off with the three sisters, obviously. I wanna talk about the romance slash smut and foreshadowing for the whole series at the end of the video. So, starting off, I rated A Court of Thorns and Roses, please don't make fun of my stars, 3.5 stars. Initially, this was a lower rating because this book is slow to get into, okay? Everybody says A Court of Thorns and Roses is basically the entry fee to the Sarah J. Maas world, to the whole series. The second book is my favorite book. So to get to that book, to get to all the greatness, you have to read this book. The only reason it is past 3 stars is because once you read the whole series, this book has so much meaning to you and there's so much background information, and Sarah J. Maas did such a good job of dropping hints throughout this whole book of how the series was gonna go, and you just don't realize it yet. On my semi-reread to prep for this video, I really liked the book, which is why it is a 3.5 stars. In comparison to the rest of the series, most of them are 5 stars. The series as a whole for me, 5 stars. Enough yapping, let's hop into the story. I have so many notes. Grab a snack or throw this on while you're doing something else because this is gonna be long. The first point of tea that I wanted to point out, our main girl here, Feyre, I chose this picture of her painting because that is Feyre. All these pictures I just pulled from Pinterest. I thought she was a boy. And I just want to know if anybody else thought this. Until I don't even know what chapter on my first read, I was trying to pick up any sort of context clues because I thought the main character of this was going to be a girl, and then I was like, wait, is it a boy? I'm so confused. I didn't know how to pronounce her name, which is Feyre, and I was lost. Okay, but then it is revealed she is a girl, and she is the youngest sister of 3. Her dad is injured. He's kind of just doing nothing. He's literally giving us nothing. We kind of hate him. And her mother died. We'll get to that in a second. So let's just start at the beginning of the series. I reorganized our board. We'll be adding and taking away as the story goes, but here is kind of our plot we're working with. It's slow, as I said. It kind of gets a little fun sometimes, gets a little boring, and then all of a sudden the last like 100 pages, we're going off the map, okay? So that's what we are working with. We start off with Feyre, who is hunting. Now, we later find out she is the provider of her whole family, even though she's the youngest. There are 3 girls, as I said, in their family. Their dad is like injured from some debt collectors, and he's basically given up. He does nothing for them. He just kind of sits around. And Feyre literally is like, okay, if we don't want to die, I have to provide. So she goes into the forest. She's doing hunting. She's been doing this for like a while, but this time is different. She's a little further away from home because she can't like find any animals. It's winter and she sees a deer. But while she's about to shoot the deer, she also sees a wolf. And this is where we find out that the wolf could be Fae. So they have some sort of like transformative powers. The Fae have magic. The Fae live on the other side of a wall. So there's like the mortal realm and the Fae realm. Okay. Feyre lives in a village where she used to be rich and now they're really poor and live in a shack after her mom died and some other stuff. And this village is pretty much right next to the wall. So it's like village, some forest, a wall, and then you hop right into Perithian, which is like the Fae world. So they're pretty much the closest mortals to living by the Fae. But the Fae we're terrified of. They could eat us. We don't like them. In fact, Feyre absolutely hates Fae. So she sees this wolf and she's like, I'm gonna try to kill it and we'll see if it's Fae. If it's Fae, it'll like transform back. So she kills this wolf, okay? We love that for her. She also kills the deer, but she can only take 1 back because they're heavy. And so she decides she's gonna skin the wolf who did not transform. So she's like, okay, it wasn't Fae. And she's gonna sell that like hide, and then she's also gonna take the deer so that they can have food. So she comes back to her village, and that's when we meet Nesta, Elaine, and her dad, who doesn't even deserve to be on the board. And her family is literally awful. Okay, she's full on providing. They don't say thank you. They don't care about her. Nesta says some nasty stuff to her. Elaine, we kind of see as like this oblivious girl. She's kind of ditzy. You could call her dumb. You know, she's just like not really all there. Whereas Nesta is smart. She's cunning and she's just really rude, especially to her sister. Now, Nesta absolutely loves Elaine. She like protects Elaine at all costs, but she doesn't care for Feyre. Okay, so the tea here is that we hate them, and that's all you need to know for now. Now, Elaine also seems to favor Nesta. Elaine also just really doesn't care too much for Feyre. Poor girl has never been loved. She doesn't know what that means. And then the dad's just like, you know what? My leg is kind of broken. We're not rich anymore. I do not care about anyone. Dad does like Elaine though. So that's about all we get. Now, this is where we see their true colors kind of come out because Feyre's like, all right, I'm going to sell the wolf hide and we can get some money. And keep in mind, they're so poor. These girls are sharing a bed. They have one room in their house that they share and the dad like sleeps on the couch or something. And they're fighting over what they're going to do with the money. Okay, it's not even, Feyre doesn't even get it. So here's a quote. This is what Feyre is thinking. What I really wanted to say was, you don't even bother to attempt to leave the house most days. Were it not for me, we would starve. Were it not for me, we'd be dead. She's talking to her dad. Feyre, he repeated and closed his eyes. My sisters had gone quiet and I looked up in time to see Nesta crinkle her nose with a sniff. She picked at my cloak. You stink like a pig covered in its own filth. Can't you at least try to pretend you're not an ignorant peasant? Okay, so Nesta is awful. She's rude. We get the point. She comes back from hunting. Nesta's like, you literally smell and look awful. Get yourself together. Okay, they're used to living rich. Basically, the first couple chapters, we're just kind of getting to know them and the village. And a little background information is that when Feyre's mom died of some sort of sickness, she made Feyre, the youngest of the three, promise to take care of them. So in this world, when you make a promise, it's like, you cannot get out of it. It's like for sure set in stone type of thing. And Feyre can't let it go. So that's why she's the one kind of providing for her family. So we're gonna kind of jump past all the boring stuff in the village. She kind of has this guy that she had a thing with, but he's getting married now. She doesn't really care. She's never loved anyone really. She kind of just hates her life and is miserable. And that's how we start the book. Pretty slow. But then a beast breaks into their little shack and breaks down the door. And this isn't just any beast. This is terrifying. It is a fae. So here's your quote. But there was a roar that half deafened me and my sister screamed as Snow burst into the room and an enormous growling shape appeared in the doorway. So then she like grabs her knife and she actually jumps in front of her family. Like she's here to protect her family. Even though like they're older, her dad should be protecting. No, once again, it's Feyre. It's always Feyre. The fae basically yells like, you're murderers. And she's like, we didn't murder anyone. Turns out that the wolf she killed was fae, and it was this fae's friend. So this is Tamlin, who is our main like guy character. So Feyre and Tamlin are our two main characters to begin with. So let's add him to the board. Tamlin. We have a lot of thoughts and feelings about Tamlin that we will get to, but as far as this book goes, we really warm up to Tamlin. But right now we're scared. He's a fae. He like is in his beast form and we don't know what's going on here. So he proposes to Feyre because she murdered his friend. She has two choices. She can either die. Currently, right now, he'll kill her. And poor Feyre, her little reaction is like, at least kill me outside. Okay, so she literally does not care about her life. As long as she can protect her family, we're good here. Tamlin, the fae, is now like, well, there's a second choice in the treaty. There's kind of this loophole that if you kill a fae, it's a life for a life. That can be death, or I can take you to Prythian and you kind of just live there with me. Now, she's terrified of going to Prythian because she thinks fae are awful, evil, scary, and what happens in Prythian could technically be worse than just dying. Plus, she doesn't really have much to live for. Now, the funny thing I wanted to point out here is that one, Tamlin assumes they've never read the treaty. This treaty has been around for about 500 years, we later learn. And he's like, okay, so I'm really counting on that they've never read it. Okay, and then the second funny thing, as we know, we find out later, Feyre can't read. So it's not only that they haven't even read it or know what's in it, Feyre Feyre herself obviously has never read it. She can't read, okay? Now, Feyre does ultimately love her family. It's kind of like family's family type of thing. She leaves. None of them say like, I love you. They don't really do goodbyes. So the only people she's ever cared about in her life are kind of just like, okay, see ya. Just like super awkward, weird vibe. And this is when I start to not like Feyre. Okay, this is the gossip. This is the tea. Feyre does not shut up. Like this whole book until the end. I was like, does she ever get better? Because Feyre's yapping constantly. And we'll get into like why it's so annoying. But to start off, he's still like in wolf form. Like this is terrifying. And he's taking her to Prythian, which we find out is the spring court where he lives. Like right on the border. There's all these courts, and where the wall is the spring court and her village. With the wall. Okay, so she's being taken into Prythian. She's never been there, obviously. She has no idea what she's in for. And she's just asking questions like up the wazoo. She doesn't shut up. And he finds it super annoying as well. Okay, he doesn't really even want to be there. And we'll find out why later. But he takes her to Prythian by putting her to sleep with his magic. So this is the first time we're kind of introduced to magic. And then she wakes up. She's like, has it been months? Has it been days? What's the deal? It's only been a little bit. And she's like, okay, so we're good. We're here. We're in Prythian. Now keep in mind, the whole reason she's going to Prythian is because she killed his friend. And now she finds out this wasn't just a wolf, it was Fae. So you might think like, oh, she murdered someone, she's gonna feel bad. But I have a quote. Murdered a fairy. That's what I'd done. My throat went dry. I killed a fairy. I couldn't bring myself to feel badly about it. Not with my family left behind to surely starve. Not when it meant one less wicked, awful creature in the world. So she goes on to basically say that she really doesn't care that she killed a fairy. Like he kind of deserved it for just being Fae. Okay, so that's where we're at here. She hates Fae, which is so important, we find out. She has to, okay? Okay, so then she's taken into Tamlin's mansion and she gets lots of food. He's like feeding her and she's kind of just like not really there for it. She's really freaked out by the whole situation, obviously. But this place is beautiful, and something we learn about Feyre, her little painting is like her whole personality, okay? She doesn't shut up about it. Everything she sees has like colors that she wants to paint. So if she sees something beautiful, she wants to paint it. That's like how she expresses everything. So she's just telling us how much she loves to paint. And a funny little thing that's not canon is a lot of people think it's funny to say that Feyre actually is really bad at painting, which like logically makes sense. In her village, she only had these like crappy paints. She painted their dresser and their bed, but like canon, she's actually good at painting. It kind of hints to her being really good later in the series. So then she finds out that these Fae, once he's like in his normal form right here, they're actually high Fae, which means they're like superior and hotter. We're gonna hear a lot about how the Fae are just hot, okay? They're more attractive, they're stronger, they're bigger. They're like superior humans with powers, basically. So this is where I have to hop in with my little tea opinion. I get she's scared, but like she just got kidnapped by this hottie right here. He's being really nice to her. He's providing for her, takes her to her mansion. She gets to live in the mansion. Everybody's taking care of her. He promised that nobody's gonna hurt her, and he's hot. So like she just complains the whole book about pretty much everything for like why? Because if it were me, I'd be like, oh no, oh this is so unfortunate. Girly pop, I'd love to be you, thank you. Not really, but you know. Now we also find out that all the Fae here are wearing these like masquerade ball masks, and for some reason when I read this book, I envisioned something completely different. I was so confused. So when I finally saw some fan art, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, we can deal with that. Imagine how annoying that is. We're gonna talk about this in a little bit, but we know what happens. We already read the book. The blight is actually Amarantha. It's a curse. He's had so long to try to break this curse. And like, for me, I would be doing everything to break this curse, not only to like get my powers back and free everyone, but like, could you imagine having to wear a mask all the time? I already don't like wearing my glasses all the time. I would be itchy, annoyed. I would do literally anything. And I love that Amarantha threw in that the spring court has to wear their mask, because like, that's just funny. Like, okay, I really can't knock the hustle there, Amarantha. Like, that's a good one. We love that. So then we're gonna meet Lucian. And I'm sorry, I could only find this picture of his basically massive head, and we're just gonna have to go with it. Lucian he's our guy, okay? All right, Lucian is a hot, okay? He's got red hair, he's got tan skin, like he is probably the hottest one there. That's the vibes I was getting. He also is stuck with, sorry, his mask is off here, which that's a spoiler for the end, but we've already read it, okay? He's got a fox mask on, which is like, it's kind of hot, okay? So we're here for it. We're basically now just Feyre and two hot Fae. I don't know, I'd kind of be living my best life. She's also in a mansion. So then there's just like a lot of boring chatting. We overhear a lot of stuff. Lucian also at this point doesn't like Feyre or just like wants her dead. He's like, can we just kill her? Like, what's the point? And Tamlin's like, no, we need to protect her. Like, let's give it a go. Lucian does later try to set her up to like let her die and then feels bad about it. But right now he's just like not really about it. He's just like, okay, I guess. Which like, now I don't understand why. I cannot comprehend why Lucian wasn't like, yeah, let's get this going, okay? He was like accepting his fate of this curse. So like, it's kind of boring, but in the long run, there's like a lot of important stuff that they talk about, I guess. And we get our first hint of the blight. Feyre's like, okay, what's the deal here? What's this? Like, she overhears about the blight and later she's gonna talk to them and be like, why? Like, what is this? And they basically explain it like a plague going around, and that's why they have to wear masks, and they're really like distantly letting her know information about it on purpose, but she thinks she's like snooping, but they know because they're Fae, okay? They just know. Okay, she has human hearing. They could have easily blocked her out from hearing it, but they do it on purpose. And they don't explain that it's actually a curse, which we'll get into. So Feyre does find out that Tamlin's actually just fully taking care of her family. He's like, I'm providing for them, don't worry about it, like you're good. And then she realizes like her promise is fulfilled with her mom by her being away. They're getting taken care of, but she doesn't really know the details yet. And later she like wants to write them a letter, but she can't read or really write and gets like mad at Tamlin when he tries to help, which is another reason why at the beginning of book Feyre, before she grows in her character, I can't stand her. Okay, the whole time I'm just like, ugh, rolling my eyes, screaming, crying, throwing up because she's just being annoying. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Okay, we also meet Alice. Wow, okay, I'm awful. This is about to be so mean because we love Alice. I don't have a picture. Also, when I was looking up fan art for her, there's like two pictures. But Alice is kind of a main character. This is Alice. I'm so sorry about this, all right? Alice lives in the mansion and she's kind of like Feyre's maid. In a way, she like picks out outfits for her and like kind of just helps her out. And she also will kind of spill tea, and later in the book, she like really comes in clutch. So we love Alice. We never ever stop liking Alice. She also has like 2 kids. She's from the summer court, right? And she had to like run away, and her kids aren't here in the spring court. I don't know, it's kind of a weird situation. But she slays at literally every point in this book, okay? We love her. Now we start to learn some distant facts about the blight. Like I said, they're letting her like overhear everything about it, but like being really vague. Even when they're talking amongst themselves, they're just like, oh, yeah, you know the thing that's killing everyone? It's so bad. But we know that this is Amarantha. The blight is basically Amarantha. Which like in hindsight, now we get it. We get why they were calling it a plague. We get why they did what they did. But it was so annoying to hear about, to read about. Because everything they say about it just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to Feyre. And this book is written from Feyre's point of view. And I've heard people say that she's like an unreliable narrator. So when you're reading from her point of view, you can't really trust anything you're reading. She's very biased. Now, we know that they can't say specifics about it because Amarantha put a curse on them to be able to not say anything specific, but like they don't even try. I feel like they really were out here, this is a theme throughout the book, doing the bare minimum to let Feyre know what's going on. Now, we know, because we've read the book, that Feyre saves the day, or at least she's like supposed to. She's part of this whole thing. She's like kind of the chosen one, and they're like doing the bare minimum here. Okay, they could not care less. The fact that Lucian even wanted her to die in the first place just proves, okay, we come to love him, but like, okay, that's where they're at. Now, Feyre wants Lucian to spill some tea, so she's like kind of following him around, trying to like befriend him and be nice to him to get him to spill the tea. And he does spill some tea on purpose, okay? He's always calculated. They kind of both are with like letting Feyre know information. Now, keep in mind, she knows nothing. She's never been to Prythian. Everything she knows is a rumor. And so anything they tell her is just truth. She also fully believes in this point in time that they cannot lie. It's like the biggest eye roll ever, because why would she believe that? There's no reason for her to believe that. But it comes up later. So Lucian lets it slip that there is this thing that can just like tell her whatever she wants, and it's called the cereal. I'm not gonna put him on the board yet, but the cereal is everybody's favorite character throughout the whole series. He spills major tea. We love him, we're here for him, but like he's like a scary creature. So like everyone struggles to capture it. It's really hard to capture. It's like a skeleton, and she should be scared and she should be ready to run away when she catches it. So Lucian's actually setting her up to die. He does not think she can catch it. He doesn't really know about, I guess, that she's like a great hunter, and he's ready for her to just go die. Which is also when we kind of learn that there's a lot of creatures, like random creatures in the Spring Court. They're just coming out of nowhere, and Tamlin's like, yeah, I always have to fight them, which like, again, he's doing the bare minimum here. Like he's being really nice to her, taking care of her, so we kind of start to like him. Plus he's hot. But like as far as his court goes, it kind of feels like, now that we know the ending, he was not doing much. He wasn't out here like trying to break the curse as soon as it happened. He's like really waiting till the last minute here. And he's like annoyed these creatures are coming into his court, but also like not doing much about it other than turning into his beast form and killing them. Which when you later learn how their society works in Prythian is very like animalistic, which isn't really how Prythian runs. Now, one of these random creatures she actually mistakes for her dad, because that's what the creature does. It kind of shows you like what you really want. So she chases after it, and then he comes and rescues her and is like, no, that's like a bad creature. And it kind of shows us like Feyre's dumb in this world. Like she doesn't know anything compared to the Fae. So it becomes extra annoying that she's always trying to run away. She's always trying to like go off into the woods by herself. She's always trying to get all the tea. And they're like, you will die. Stop trying to run away and do weird stuff. Like you're going to die. And they like just have to keep track of her because she keeps like going off and doing whatever she wants. And my thought here is like, Feyre, you're a human little girl. Like you're just a girl. Although she slays and she becomes more. In this moment in time, she's just a girl. She happens to have some good hunting skills, but like we're talking nasty, scary creatures that could kill her easily. He also blames all the creatures on the blight, which is just Amarantha. And then because Tamlin's kind of like helping her and being nice to her and saving her from these creatures, she starts to think about him like a lot, and she's worried because he's always out there killing all these like demon creatures, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I hope he's okay, like I hope he comes back. I would not mind seeing him again. So it's starting. Okay, Tamlin also reveals that he does not like being in this role. Okay, he's not here for it. He never wanted to be. He kind of fell into this role. He wanted to be a warrior. We don't know what that means yet. Okay, so we'll get into it later. And Feyre's like, that's so sad. Poor Tammy. Like, we need to help him. Okay, she's kind of like feeling bad for him. Keep in mind, he did kidnap her. Okay, that's where we're at. Like I said, they're always talking enough for her to hear just enough, but not quite enough, you know? So here's an example. So they're like chatting, like what's going on here? What are we doing? And this is from Lucian. He says, by the cauldron, which the cauldron we find out about later in the series. This whole book we're like, what the heck? Okay, but we'll continue on. By the cauldron, Tam, there isn't much time. You're just sulking and glowering. You're not even trying to fake it anymore. So even Lucian's like, dude, like we've had 50 years and you've done nothing. Our entire fate is on you. And you're just like, okay, like whatever happens. They're fighting. And he's like, oh, I can't be like my dad, yada, yada. So back off. And then he's like, back off? Back off while you seal our fates and ruin everything? I stayed with you out of hope, not to watch you stumble. For someone with a big heart of stone. For someone with a heart of stone. Feyre, did you hear that? A heart of stone. Okay, they're saying this as loud as they can so she can overhear it. Yours is certainly soft these days. That's our quote. Okay, so keep in mind the heart of stone. We need to know about that. And that's not the only time that Feyre overhears that Tamlin has a heart of stone, but as a reader, you think nothing of it. So poor Feyre girl also thinks nothing of it. Okay, so then Tamlin finds out that Feyre can't read or write. And he does kind of give her a little compliment. So we're like, okay, Slake. Okay, maybe he's actually trying to break the curse. And obviously we already know what the curse is, but just to catch you up if you don't, at the end of the book, we find out that this blight is actually a curse by Amarantha. So Hybern is the big evil king. He sent out a spy, Amarantha, and she's kind of like here for Tamlin. And I'll get into like the details of why she made the curse and all that when we find out later in the book. But all you need to know is the curse is actually, he has to get a human to kill a fae with hatred in their heart. Then after she hates fae so much that she kills a fae, she has to fall in love with Tamlin and say the words, I love you. Okay, the words must be said. Keep that in mind. So that's what we're rocking with. And since we're just gossiping about the book, you don't find out about that until later. So like, you're just left in the dark, you're oblivious. But like going through this story with that in your mind, what are you doing? Okay, but as you're reading the book, you're like falling for him. You're like, okay, like, yes, king, give us just like the slightest bit of attention. Thank you. So remember how he had 50 years? Yeah, we're on year 49. He really waited till the last minute. Okay, gotcha. Anyways, Tamlin doesn't really help her read. He just leaves her in the study, which is actually when she sees this big old mural. And this mural is really important for the series, so just keep it in mind. But basically there's like the cauldron and Perithian, and she kind of gets like this overview of everything fae, okay? But no series spoilers, so moving on. So she's working on writing this letter that she wants to write to her family, even though she can't read and write. Cool, cool, cool. And Tamlin's in there and he's like, can I help you? And she's like, back off, I don't want your help. You're gonna make fun of me. And Tamlin says, why should I mock you for a shortcoming that isn't your fault? Let me help you. I owe you for the hand. So in his head, and kind of from the reader point of view, we're like, oh my gosh, he's trying to be nice, like he's not making fun of her. She's like, shortcoming? It was a shortcoming. So she's feeling defeated by this. So all the goodness and like potential romance feelings that have been like, ooh, they're coming up. She's like, okay, now I'm mad at him. That was rude. But like, it was true. But like, it was so true that it hurt, and he shouldn't tell me things like that. It does make her feel like a little fragile human, and he's just like a big predator now in her eyes, but she will get over it. So now she's like really determined, like, I want to write to my family. I want to make sure they know about the blight, which she can't read or write and doesn't want help. And also, how did she think okay, little rant. How did she think the letter was gonna get there? Everything about writing a letter makes me hate her. I'm sorry, it does. Like, what did she think? Anyways, so up until this point, this is where we're at in the book. Give us nothing, okay? We're about to get to our first little hump here. It's about to get fun. Feyre is told by Lucien that the cereal is really hard to catch. She could die. It's like a whole ordeal. And she's like, you're talking to me? Like, I can do this. She's got all the motivation in the world, so she's gonna go for it. So she knows that the cereal is gonna like tell her anything she wants if she can catch it. And as hard as it is, she does it. Okay, this is when we're like, oh, okay, Feyre, you're not just a little fragile human. Like, you're actually giving us something. Slay, we love it. Okay, so this is what we get. She's like, is there any way for me to get home? And the cereal's like, literally no. And she wants to know more about Tamlin. And the cereal's like, girl, here's a quote. Be more specific, for I know a good many things about the High Lord of the Spring Court. Okay, Mr. Haughty Tamlin is not just living in this mansion in the Spring Court. He's the High Lord. This is where we get some Fae lore. So there are 7 courts and 7 High Lords. Each court has a High Lord who runs the whole court. Tamlin is one of them. So now she's like, okay, got it. So he's hot, he's a High Lord. Am I scared? Am I like attracted? I don't know. But that's like shocker information. The cereal's like, what? Like you didn't know? Like the cereal's constantly accidentally spilling tea. Okay, so then we get one of the most famous quotes that you need to know. The cereal, let's get the cereal on the board here. First of all, yeah, the cereal's supposed to be like scary and hard to catch and just like, we should be terrified and ready to run for our lives, like I said. Instead, the cereal's spilling tea. There's a lot of really funny memes of the cereal just like literally spilling tea. How do you spell this? So here's our famous quote from our cereal. Stay with the High Lord, human. That's all you can do. You will be safe. Do not interfere. Do not go looking for answers after today. You will be devoured by the shadow over Perithian. He will shield you from it, so stay close to him and it will be righted. What you need to know is that this quote, because she really trusts the cereal, like can't lie, which is true. She repeats to herself almost every chapter, I swear. Stay with the High Lord, stay with the High Lord, stay with the High Lord. Like this is kind of her motivation for everything, is like, if I can just stay with the High Lord, Tamlin, I'll be safe. So that's when she's like, okay, so I guess I can trust him. He's supposed to keep me safe. We're good, we're good, we're good. So also we get some more information from the cereal. she learns about Hybern. Hybern is like this king, and Amarantha was one of his spies, like I said, but this is her first time learning this. And this spy came like 100 or like 50 years ago, something like that. And that's all we get, because then the serial is interrupted by the Naga chasing after her. So she actually lets the serial go. She could have let the serial there to die, but she actually lets it go, which is like cute. Okay, so she's not just murdering everything and everyone. And she has to fight 4 of the Naga. And these things are like scary. Here's a quote from them. "Scrawny human thing, he spat to the others whose smiles grew sharper. Do you know what you've cost us?" So now we're kind of getting a hint about what these creatures are. They're like, do you know what you've cost us? AKA the curse. And she does successfully like kill one of them. She's slaying, we love her, but they're like really chasing her down. They're really hard to kill. And then all of a sudden Tamlin shows up in his beast form, slaughters them, covered in blood. They get a little moment. I think he like lands on her or something. And this is when we're like, oh, okay, Tamlin. She loves it. She's here for it. And this is when she's like, okay, like, I know I have to stay with him. I wasn't really sure about that, but like, he just saved my life. Everything's good. He is nice to me. And she kind of starts to get some feelings. So this is where us and Feyre really come around on Tamlin. And then we get Lucien to drop some more tea. So they get back and she's like, oh my gosh, like Faye can't even lie. Like, are you lying to me? And he's like, who told you that? And she's like, oh, well, I've just always been told that. So she's like fully relying on all of these rumors that she's heard from humans about like Faye. It's like vampires and garlic. Like that's how it is with Faye and iron, except it's not true. So like she had like an iron bracelet or something. Yeah, that does nothing. Like that, there's no protection against the Fae really. They can indeed lie, and she's like shocked, which is so annoying. In my opinion. Nothing she thought about the Fae were true. She thought they were all evil and wanted to kill her, but yet they haven't, and they've actually been nice to her. Okay, so that's not true. And it goes on and on and on. Everything she knew about them basically is a lie. Specifically the Fae that she does know, which is Tamlin and Lucien. And so she's like, oh, so all humans are helpless. 1000% helpless against the Fae. If the Fae go into the human realm, we're just screwed. There's no defenses. Then Tamlin is trying to help her write the letter again, which actually just makes her mad, which is so funny because like, how did she think she was gonna write the letter? But we also learned some tea about humans and Fae. She's like, I don't want your pity. And then he's like, well, what about a friend? And she's like, can fairies be friends with mortals? And he says, 500 years ago, enough fairies were friends with mortals that they went to war on their behalf. So we find out there was like a great war, and actually all the Fae weren't trying to kill the mortals. Like they were like down with the mortals. They wanted to protect them. So she's like, oh, okay, so that's definitely interesting. We also get some tea here, and she's like, oh, the war was 500 years ago, and he reveals that he was like a kid when this happened. So like he's old. He's really old, like 500 years old. And then we also learned that he altered her family's memories. So they think that like she's off with this like sick, distant aunt they didn't know about. She's also rich, so that's where all their money came from. So now they're like living in a mansion, they're living wealthy again, all from the aunt's money, but it's really Tamlin who's doing it. And she's like, oh, you altered my family's memories. Like, I think she feels weird about it, but at the same time, she's like, they're taken care of. Like, I'm relieved of my burden of that like promise I made to my mom. So it's kind of a good thing. And she's like, okay, maybe he's not so bad. Like, he does make me mad, but at the same time, he like did not have to do that. You know, he didn't have to take care of my family, which is when we're, you know, Feyre's starting to kind of come around on me. I'm like, okay, yes, girl, make some logic, make some sense. Your family's taken care of, you're taken care of, you're with Hottie here, like just live your life. Other than the whole blight thing, you know, like I get being nervous about that. She's like, all right, so let's be friends. Also, I would love to paint. So I'm gonna backtrack here a moment because I have a little rant, a little gossipy moment. Feyre is so annoying about paint. Not in like, I'm fine with her talking about it, but like there was another time where she's walking around the mansion and there's this like beautiful art. And like, I don't blame her. Art is beautiful. And she's like looking up at it. And as soon as someone walks by, she's like, I wasn't looking at it. No. And she like doesn't want anyone to know that she likes painting. Like he's trying to get to know her and she's giving him nothing. She's basically acting like she has no hobbies. Meanwhile, all she ever talks about, thinks about, looks at is painting, art. She sees colors all the time. She wants to look at all the art in his house, but doesn't want anyone to know that she's into it. And I'm like, Feyre girly, what are they gonna do? waterboard you with paint, like you're good. There's nothing they can, like what are they gonna do? Not give you paint? You already don't have it. Like you have nothing to lose by letting people know that, oh, hey, yeah, I actually like to paint. So he's like, okay, girly, yes, give us something. Finally, I'll get you some paint. And we also get a cute little moment. So this is from Favor's point of view in her head. He smiled at me still, broadly and without restraint or hesitation. Isaac, that was her like little lover boy in her village. Isaac had never smiled at me like that. Isaac had never made my breath catch just a little bit. The feeling was startling enough that I walked out, grasping the crumbled paper in my pockets, as if doing so could somehow keep the answering smile from tugging on my lips. So she's like, okay, I'm getting a little feeling, and it's like more than just attraction, it's like actual feelings, but like I don't want him to know. So that's where we're at. Okay, then this crazy thing happens where this fae comes in and he's like literally disgusting and crying, screaming, throwing up, everything. His wings have been ripped out of him, so we kind of learned, okay, there's some fae with wings. We didn't know that. And he like comes in, Tamlin's trying to help him. Lucian's like, no, gotta go by. He's like throwing up, can't stand the sight of it. And she's like, oh my gosh. This is where we find out she's like really sensitive and like kind of in touch. And she's like, I wouldn't want to die alone. So she goes to this fae and like basically lies to him to help him like feel better. He's like, you're gonna be okay. Like you'll get your wings back. We're gonna get them back for you. Which is all lies. Like he's literally dying. And fae can like heal themselves, but he was too injured to heal himself. So like keep that in mind for the series. Feyre just like holds his hand till the end, until he takes his last breath, and it's like really sad. We get a little bit more of her character there. She basically wants to stay with him till the end, and there is a little quote here that is important for the end of the book. He's like, okay, you literally hate Faye. Why would you like help this Faye out who's like dying? And she says, because I wouldn't want to die alone, I said, and my voice wobbled as I looked at Tamlin again, forcing myself to meet his stare, because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy. Okay, so she understands like that would be really hard and she wants someone to be there for her. Got it. Tamlin's like, you know what, Slay, let's go on a picnic. While they're on this picnic, she starts to like go off about all the beautiful colors. Okay, she's getting out of the mansion. She's kind of singing the spring court a little bit. She's describing Tamlin, all cute, the colors all cute. We kind of get butterflies from this moment. And then they go to this lake, but Lucian's like, yeah, I'm good. So here's where we get some like Lucian lore, because he's like staying back and she's like, what's the deal? Why doesn't he want to come? He's like, okay, I'm tired of third wheeling. Not really. He just like stays back. He's actually traumatized from what just happened, seeing that Faye come in. Remember, he was like throwing up. So Tamlin's like, yeah, actually, Lucian's not from the spring court. He's actually from the summer court. Hence the look. That's the summer court look.
Editing Sydney, sorry, every time I referred to Lucian, I said the summer court. He is from the autumn court. That is very important to know the difference. So I apologize. Every time I say summer, just think autumn.
He is actually the youngest son of the Summer Court High Lord. So he's like kind of in line for the throne, but not really, because he's the youngest, and his brothers all like hate him. And he had this girl that he was in love with, but she was not of the right class or whatever. So they actually like beheaded her in front of him, which is awful. So like seeing that fairy like really threw him off and thought of that. It's actually really sad, and you do have to know that for like stuff later in the series. So just kind of keep that in mind. So anyway, he's like back. They're going to this lake, and it is described as a lake of starlight. It seems very magical. She's like, oh, what's the deal here? He hops in and he's like, let's go swimming. And she's actually gonna open up about her life. She's starting to feel comfortable around Tamlin. They like strip down to their underwear. She's like, oh, he's basically stripping me with his eyes, but like she keeps her underwear on, okay? And it's like, we're good, we're covered. They get in the lake, and we have a quote. Maybe it was the enchanted pool, or maybe it was the genuine interest behind the questions, but I smiled and told him about those years in the woods. So this is where we get some like Feyre lore. She talks about where she's from, how it was really hard. She's been doing this since she was like 8. I think they reveal that in this page. If not, they talk about it later. She's been like providing for her family for a long time. And he's like, oh my gosh, like I feel so bad. Poor girly. Later she goes in, and Lucian also is now coming around, and he like feels bad. So he like gives her a sword. And by the way, the whole serial Naga thing, he actually heard her screaming and was gonna come save her, but he like didn't get there in time. Like Tamlin got there first, so he's like, sorry girly, like here's a sword, because when she first arrived, they actually took away her like only little weapon, and she felt very vulnerable by that, not having weapons as a hunter. So she gets a little sword, and Tamlin had told her there's a gallery in the mansion, but he needed to like clean it up a bit. And he's like, it's ready, let's go see it. And she just like loses her mind here and wants to spend all her time in the gallery. Time passes, yada yada. So like we kind of had some not spice, but like fun scenes happen. We're kind of dropping back down to a little bit of boring vibes, but there's important stuff that goes on. Time passes and then she's feeling kind of sad. So she's like walking around the garden. Tamlin goes out to this rose garden with her. And we actually learn about mates, which becomes a really big thing in this series. Sorry, I had to take intermission because this is a long video. Anyway, back where we were. Tamlin and Feyre in the garden, we learn about mates. Mates become extremely important in this series, so we do need to cover them a little bit. Tamlin says, my father had this garden planted for my mother. It was a mating present. So we're like, okay, that's interesting. And then they talk about it a little bit later. And that's when we find out that mates are actually more important than like marriages. It's like above marriage. Not everybody gets a mate, but if you do, you are equal for each other in every way. Hi Faye, mostly marry, he said. This is from Tamlin. His golden skin flushing a bit. But if they're blessed, they'll find their mate. They're equal, they're matched in every way. High Fae wed without the mating bond. But if you find your mate, the bond is so deep that marriage is insignificant in comparison. Then Feyre responds with this, which is just like a cutesy little fun moment. I didn't have the nerve to ask if fairies had ever had mating bonds with humans. Okay, Feyre, we see you, we see you. Anyway, so backing back up to their initial talk in the garden about mates, whatnot. She's like picking at roses, so her fingers are getting kind of like torn up. And he kisses her bloody hand, and then with his bloody mouth, kisses her cheek. And she feels really giddy about it, so we should probably read this. First, leading up to this, she's all like worried and whatnot. And she's like, oh my gosh, it shouldn't even matter. And he's like, if it grieves you, he said, the word caressing my bones, then I don't think it's absurd at all. And just like the way that she describes how he's talking, she's about to be in her lover girl era, okay? And then she's out here like, all right, what's the deal here? Like old Faye, hanging out, haughty with this human? Like she says, why? Why do any of this? And he responds, because your human joy fascinates me. Now this is interesting and a little bit of a talking point because like, she's not a toy, you know, like, oh, it fascinates me. Like, I feel like that could be taken many ways. Luckily here, Feyre is like, okay, slay, love that, he's into me. But it's just interesting, so we'll leave it at that. Then on to the cutesy moment. I hadn't moved from the moment his mouth had met my skin. One day there will be answers for everything, he said. And then she's narrating and says, he left me and I took a gasping breath, not realizing I'd been holding it in, not realizing that I craved his warmth, his nearness until he was gone. Miss Girl is eating it up. She's loving it. So then once again, Feyre cannot be tamed. Miss Miley Cyrus girly can't be tamed. She's running around. She goes into the woods, sets a trap, and actually captures Tamlin. Okay, it's kind of like a cutesy, silly, fun moment, okay? He gets stuck in the trap and she's like, oh my gosh, you were stalking me, but it's like kind of cute. He's like, yeah, because I like want to know where you are. And earlier in the book, she'd been carrying around this like paper with words she wanted to like remember or write down or something. Remember, she can't like read or write, so that was really important to her. And he took those words and made a poem, but not just any poem, a little spicy, dirty poem for Feyre. So this is like, it kind of feels like the first time he's like really putting his foot out there, like, hey girly, I want to be with you, okay? It's not that I'm not just fascinated, like, we need to get it on, okay? So she eats it up, okay? And then that's when Feyre did ask about the mates, like we covered, and it's such a deep bond. But we also talk a little bit more here, and Tamlin reveals some stuff about his past. So Tamlin reveals that he didn't want to be like his dad, and he talks about how his dad is actually worse than Lucian's dad, the guy who beheaded his lover in front of him. And we learn the lore that Tamlin's whole family was murdered. So that's why like he's just kind of like the High Lord vibing, no other family. He didn't want to be High Lord. He wanted to be like a warrior. He never expected to have this role, but then his whole family was killed. So you kind of just like inherit it if you're in the bloodline, I guess. So that's why he's High Lord. And Feyre learns that there actually used to be slaves in the Spring Court under his father, and she's freaked out by this, as she should be. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to see any remnants of it. I don't want to know anything about it. If this court was built by slaves, don't tell me. I'm gonna live in my happy little oblivious era, and you know, fair enough. So Tamlin did say, many of my father's courtiers defected to other courts rather than have a warrior beast snarling at them. That's how he describes himself. And then she says in her head, a half-wild beast. Nesta had once called me that. It was an effort not to take his hand, not to reach out to him and tell him that I understood. So as he's explaining his family lore and he's just like a crazy wild beast that nobody cares about, she's like, oh my gosh, literally same. My family is alive, but they all hate me and I kind of hate them, but I kind of love them, but like they're mean to me and I get you. And so they're bonding. But my little rant to add on top of that is that I did find this annoying, okay, when I was reading it. Miss Girl, you do not relate. I'm sorry. Yes, your sisters are mean to you and called you a half-wild beast. He actually is a half-wild beast. He literally transforms into a like giant horse-sized wolf with, I don't know, the way they describe it is it's not just a wolf. This thing is a wild. So he actually is a half-wild beast, and that's all I'll say for no spoilers, but like when he goes into beast form, he is truly a beast. You are just like a cutesy little girly with a rough childhood. It's a little different. Anyways, then we learn about Calamai. I don't know how to say it. This is probably the weirdest part in the book, I will say. Basically, it's a festival. They're having their moment. She hears about this festival, the bonfires, and he's like, yeah, it's like this fun little festival. You cannot come. Don't even think about it. Don't look at it. Don't go there. And like, as we learn, Miss Girl needs to stay away. This is weird, okay? It's a weird festival. And then Favorite can't see, but the adder shows up, or ACOTAR or whatever, and he's like invisible because they put a glamour over him, and he's like, you guys are running out of time, get it together. The curse is almost, you know, gonna not be broken, okay? And she's like, okay, interesting. She's overhearing, once again, overhearing what's going on here. Then Tamlin mentions something called the Great Rite, which is what makes Calamai weird. But she's like, okay, I don't really understand what it is, but like, okay, it's some sort of festival where there's like gotta be magic, like reproduced, one might say, into the world. It's some sort of ritual. And Miss Girly wants to go. She wants to have a fun time, but she's not allowed. And because of this Great Rite, he can't really control himself. He actually, once again, is turning into a half-wild beast. Like he is slowly transforming, claws are coming out. He's basically like horny and turning into a wolf at the same time. So dangerous for human Favorite here. I do have to point out here, once again, Tamlin is just always about to turn into a beast. Like the whole book, it's like, oh, his claws were coming out. Like I swear the lines like his claws were coming out or like scratching against his chair is in every chapter. He needs to learn how to control himself a little bit, okay? Like he's High Lord. He could get himself together just a little, okay? I just had to say it. So then yeah, Tamlin and Lucien are like, Miss Girl, stay in your room. And she's like, yes, sir. But actually, no. So she does obey for a second, but then it's almost like she cannot help herself. She's being drawn, okay? The bonfires, the music, the drums. She wants to go, okay? And can you knock the hustle? Why be trapped in a mansion when literally everyone else is out having a good time? Talk about FOMO. But there's a deeper thing that happens here. She goes, and these people, or Fae or whatever, are like surrounding her. They're evil, they're bad. We meet someone very special. She runs into someone that she calls the most beautiful man she's ever met. So I must read the infamous quote. So later we do learn that this is Rhys. So let me put him on the board real quick. Now, before I read the quote of their first interaction, since we've all already seen the book, read the book, I did not organize this very well. You know what? These girlies, we don't even need them. They can just hang out down here like nobody's business because they're none of our business anymore. It's actually perfect having Rhys by Feyre and also having Tamlin by Feyre. So like I said, since everybody's read the book, since this is spoilers and we're just talking about this book, at the end of the book, we do have a lot of mixed feelings about Rhysand, but we can all agree that he is in fact extremely hot. Like everything it does, even if it puts us off, we love. We don't know how to feel about his character morally, but we can all agree he's like hot and we kind of love when he's in the book, okay? So this is Reese. I'll go ahead and put the full name for y'all, Rhysand. Yes, that is how you say it. I would know, okay? I would know, trust me. Anyways, so here's the infamous quote. Rhysand, who we don't know is Rhysand yet. There you are. I've been looking for you. What an odd thing to say, right? Okay, interesting. She in her head says, keep in mind, she's got Mr. Hottie, Mr. going to the right ritual over here. She says, standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Miss Girl, you're taken. You are taken. What do you mean? I can't blame ya. Can't blame ya. But like, what do you mean? And then I also want to read just like a few little quotes from this era. She also says that the night seeming to press in closer around him. For a moment, we said nothing. Thank you didn't seem to cover what he'd done for me, but something about the way he stood with absolute stillness. The night seeming to press in closer around him. And then later, after he talks, she says, his voice was a lover's purr that sent shivers through me, caressing every muscle and bone and nerve. Miss Girl, I mean, she's kind of got a crush. A little bit of a crush here. And then she says, as if he'd been molded from the night itself. So, spoilers for this book, obviously, but Feyre doesn't know this is Rhysand. She doesn't know who Rhysand is. Later in the book, we learn he is the High Lord of the Night Court. The way she describes him without knowing this is certainly interesting. She literally describes him as the night pressing in on him, radiating off of him. Like, he is the night. He is sophistication. He's holding himself together. He's kind of maybe a little scary, but he's also like really hot. As she said, she like can't resist him. Okay, but she can because she's like, okay, this is my man, bring me back. Lucien takes her back from this situation and is like, what were you doing? You should not have been there. And the reason why is quite odd. Lucien explains what the Great Rite is. The Great Rite is Tamlin here has to sleep with, hook up with, whatever, a woman to like release the magic energy back into the court. So this is for the good of everyone. It's for the magic. And if Feyre was there because of the like hormones and the smells, he would have not been able to resist her. And he's also like, later, I think he literally says like, yeah, you needed to stay away because this wouldn't be lovemaking. This would have been like scary. And she's like a fragile little human girl, remember? Okay. So without getting into details, that's that. So she does go back to the mansion and she's like, you know what? I need a cookie. Fair enough. So she's going down to the kitchen to get a cookie and Tamlin catches her in the hallway. And he is being like all up in her business. He's like, I thought I told you to stay out of here. Then she's like, well, I didn't. I'm going to get a cookie. He like slams her against the wall. He has like paint all over him from the ritual and she can clearly see where another woman has been touching him. But the vibes weren't really jealousy. It was like, oh. And then he actually takes a little nibble out of her neck, gives her like a good old bite. So this is technically our first little spice scene. It's not like smut, but it's like a little spice. The words are definitely to spice you up, okay? But that happens and she's into it. Okay, yeah. Now, I do have to point out something about, to put it blatant, horniness in ACOTAR is often accompanied by smells. And if you're Fae, you have like a heightened sense of smell. So anytime anybody is feeling it, you know, anyone else can smell it. So let's say Tamlin's feeling a little in the mood. Lucien would be able to smell it. Let's say Rhysand is. Tamlin would be able to smell it. Everyone can smell it. So Miss Feyre here, if at any point this whole book had felt that way, he would have smelled it. It's definitely an interesting little tidbit that Sarah J. Maas decided to just throw on in there. And yeah, that is certainly something. It's in there a lot throughout the series. The next day, she's like, I am gonna wear a dress. I'm gonna show off the bite mark. She wants to kind of like embarrass him. So she does this, she comes down and Lucien's like, I think I actually have somewhere to be like literally right now. He's embarrassed, he's out of there. Tamlin's not embarrassed. He's kind of liking it. And also Tamlin doesn't feel bad. He's like, I did tell you to stay away and you didn't. So like, it's literally not my fault. like I told you, even though he didn't actually explain why she needed to stay away. Can't blame him, right? He cannot take responsibility for what his actions did last night. Yeah, Lucian is out of there. He uses his magic to like make the table they're sitting at shorter so he can like be closer to her, and talks about how like it is hard to use his magic because of the blight, but like it's worth it to be next to a beautiful girl. And this is one of our first like straight up compliments he's given her. She's all pretty, she's dressed, she has like his marking on her, and he's like, yeah, you're beautiful. Okay, interesting. He actually specifically said, you do look beautiful. He said quietly, I mean it. He added with my mouth twisted to the side, didn't you look in the mirror? So yeah, he's ready to finally give it a little try. Let's break this curse, why don't we? But I must add that he's running out of time. There is no time left. He's had 50 years and he's like, you know what, I'll start trying today. Okay, he's had all this time with her. He's like, all right, now I'll potentially get her to fall in love with me here with who knows how much time left, like a few weeks, I think. Then she's like showing off her paintings. He wants to keep one. She really connects with him about it. He wants the one of the woods. And she also is like, can I help with the blight? Like she's finally like, let me in on the secret. And he's like, no, this is my responsibility. You're telling me there were no hints he could give about like, hey, yeah, actually you could help. And all you have to do is like, love me. I don't know what he could and couldn't say. We never get the tea on that, but like he really gave her nothing and said it's my responsibility. So anyway, he takes her painting and she feels just really cozy and warm about everything, and she leaves her door unlocked that night. Okay, she's feeling really safe. So then the next day, they're kind of out and about. She's like seeing more of the spring court, and he kind of mentions that Fae have a heightened sense of everything, smell, new colors. They're kind of talking about it, and he's like, I can show you for a kiss. And she's like, oh, yeah, like, okay. He expects her to be like, oh, yeah, no. And she's like, yeah, no, literally, please. Please let me see these colors I need to paint, right? Okay. So he gives her a kiss on each eyelid, and it like opens up the world to her. The glamour that's apparently been over everything is removed. She sees him and is like, oh yeah, he's definitely hot. Like she thought he was hot already. Now he's like God tier level hot, okay? But he does have the mask on, so she kind of wonders what he looks like. And she sees like new colors, and it's just like really great experience for her. And then they take a little nap. So then she goes back to the mansion, and since the glamour is removed, there's like people everywhere, and Alice comes in. Poor Alice, no picture. Alice comes in and she's like, who are you? And Alice is like, girl, it's literally me. There had been a glamour even over Alice. Alice is actually like made of wood. I forgot about this. She is like bark skin. So Faye was like, oh, okay, hey Alice. And she also realizes that the manor is not empty. There are people everywhere. So earlier in the book, she had like chased after, I think it was like the Bogue that looked like her dad. And she thought she was just out and about being a little girly alone. All the time she snuck out to go to the woods. All that time, there were actually a ton of people around. So it's kind of like an embarrassing moment. Like, oh, literally everything I've done, there's been people watching and I thought I was alone. Like if it was me, I would be so embarrassed I probably wouldn't leave my house for at least a month. Like what if I was out and about and I was like picking my nose or pulling out a wedgie and like all these people were watching? What if I decided to take a pee in a bush? That would be traumatizing for me, but she handles it pretty well. Okay, then things pick up. They find a severed head and they find out it's actually from the Night Court, which now we know is Rhysand's court. So now we get a little bit of lore about the Night Court. It's kind of like evil and kind of like works for Amarantha. So it's from the Night Court, but they think it's actually from Amarantha vibes. And there's another party. Okay, this is for summer solstice, and we learned that fairy wine is really strong. So like Lucian is taking Faye around and he's like, don't drink the wine. It's not like human wine. And on a human, like you'll black out quick. Okay, this, I can't even think of a comparison. It's like, I don't know, like 10 shots of alcohol in one drink for her. Like this will do you in. Can't imagine the hangover here. And she drinks it anyway because she's Feyre, and she gets drunk and she's dancing, dancing, dancing. She never stops dancing, and she has a cute little girly time with all the other girlies dancing. Then we get our first big ick from Tamlin. If you're like me, it was an ick. He's playing the fiddle. He's just doing his little fiddle thing. I don't even know how to play a fiddle, so I don't know what I'm doing here. I think it has a thing. Anyway, she's eating it up. She loves the fiddle. She's dancing. She starts to like sober up. By the end of the night, she's actually sober, even from the fairy wine. But she was going hard on her dancing, so she probably burned it all off. They run off and they have their first kiss. So now they're lovebirds, officially. Cute! And then they like watch the sunrise, or the sun, whatever, one of the suns. I think it's the sunrise. And then the next day, the sexual tension is cutting the air, okay? So they just had their moment, sexual tension's high, they're giving each other looks, and then Lucian's like, hey, so like the blight killed like 100 kids. So there's that. She's like, oh, that kind of like totally ruined the vibes here, and like that sucks. And then they're still talking about that, and they're like, Feyre, hide! And they like shove her into the curtains and put a glamour over her. We're actually gonna get our second ick of Tamlin in this scene, because Mr. Hottie here, Rhysand, High Lord of the Night Court, is coming in. And this is bad because he's like evil, he sent the severed head, scary times. Most beautiful man enters the room, and they both hate him, of course, because he kind of like works for Amarantha, and he's talking about the blight to Lucien and Tamlin, and this is actually when Lucien says that he's Amarantha's whore. Ooh, that becomes heavy, but for now, that's what we know about him. He's sent a severed head, he's High Lord of the Night Court, they hate him, they're scared of him. Somehow he's like free, as far as we know, like he's kind of like working for Amarantha. So we're like, oh, he's just evil. Got it. Cool, cool, cool. And he's sleeping with her. So that's certainly interesting. And it's actually the first time we officially hear Amarantha's name. So I will now add her to the board. Another little break, sorry. And I'm also sorry about the last about 20 minutes having a weird mic issue. Didn't realize that was happening, so I'm refilming a good amount of it. Anyways, now we have Amarantha. I put her next to Rhys because as far as we know right now, they're kind of working together. This is also when we officially find out that Rhysand is indeed High Lord of the Night Court, so now you're all caught up. We do get this quote after Lucien calls Rhysand Amarantha's whore. Rhysand says, her whore I might be, but not without reasons. So since you've read the whole book, you kind of find out that Rhysand is just as much under the curse as everyone else, and that's all I can say for this book. But it is true, he is Amarantha's whore. But anyway, back to the plot. So Rhysand is also pretty smart, and he's like, the table's set for 3, there's only 2 of you, where's the third person? Basically, he like removes the glamour, sees Feyre, and of course he recognizes Feyre because they ran into each other. He's like, girly, I know you. And Lucien is like, oh, that's my fiance. Forgot that happened, which is kind of funny. And then Rhys is just like, no, like she's this girl, not your fiance. She also had a weapon, and he just immediately took it away from her and is like, that's not gonna do anything with me. And then because they're kind of talking loosely about the blight and Amarantha, Feyre's so lost. She's like, who's Amarantha? Why is he so evil? Etc. And he's like, she doesn't know. Like, you guys have barely told her anything? Are you kidding me? What? And then she feels claws on her brain. So basically, Rhys has these powers where he can go into people's heads. He can read their minds. He can like shatter their brain, make them go crazy. He can just kill them. He's really powerful. He does start to read her thoughts out loud, which are all dirty thoughts about Tamlin. So now he kind of knows that she is indeed in love with him, which keep in mind, that is what will break the curse. So just a little like recap. Basically, Rhysand knows what the curse is. He knows the way to break the curse is for her to say I love you to Tamlin. And now he knows that this is like happening, but he kind of like works for Amarantha. So Tamlin's like, please. He's like begging him not to say anything to Amarantha. And then Rhysand pointed at the ground and his smile became vicious. Beg and I'll consider not telling Amarantha. Tamlin dropped to his knees and bowed his head. Lower. Tamlin pressed his forehead on the ground, his hands sliding along the floor towards Rhysand's boots. And then Feyre is narrating, I could have wept with rage at the sight of Tamlin being forced to bow to someone, at the sight of my High Lord being put so low. Rhysand pointed at Lucien, you too, fox boy. So basically, they have to get down and beg Rhysand not to tell Amarantha that they're pretty much about to potentially break the curse. Now that we know how it ends, this is actually a really complex scene to look back on. I don't have too much to say, keeping it within the bounds of book 1, but later in the book we do get the vibes like Rhysand just hates Tamlin. So this wasn't even so much of like, I'm not, like he was kind of already planning on not telling Amarantha. I mean, he's also stuck under the curse, but he just doesn't like Tamlin. So he's gonna like use this as an excuse to kind of like embarrass him. And then another side point is that Feyre says, my high lord, like how dare he make my high lord get down and beg. So she views Tamlin, he's a high lord, really high up, which granted he's a high lord, but in this moment, she does underestimate that Rhysand is also a high lord and potentially worse or like more powerful considering he can make Tamlin beg. That kind of just goes right over her head. We don't need to think about that. Anyway, so I kind of get the ick because he does bow, and when you're reading this in the moment, it's like, oh, he doesn't fight for her. He doesn't like really try anything. But the flip side is that he actually does do it to protect her, so it could be seen as like a cute thing. I don't know, it's kind of just a weird scene. Another important thing that actually happens here is he asks for her name, and she tries to come up with a lie as quick as possible because he can just read her mind. So if she doesn't say it, he'll just read her mind. So she thinks of the first person she can think of, which is a girl from her village with her sisters, Claire Better. This is a big yikes because we know later in the book, Claire Better dies because of this. So then pretty much right after this, Feyre's really scared and Tamlin is coming to comfort her. And he's like, I'm sorry, but you have to leave Prythian. I'm actually gonna send you back to the mortal lands. She's really freaked out by this because at this point she is in love with him. And she's like, wait, I thought we were a thing. I thought we had something going here. He clarifies that he does really like her. There is something here, but it's just too dangerous. She needs to go home. So it's like, it's not you, it's me. But also it's not even me, it's just Amarantha. But also, I'm sending you away even though you can literally break the curse. Anyways, then there's a smut scene. This is like kind of the one and only like true smut scene in the book. It's interesting. I don't like smut. So yeah, all you need to know about this scene is that at the end, he does whisper, I love you. So he has said the official curse breaking words, but to break the curse, she has to say the words. She hasn't said anything. The next day, she is literally rushed out. So they sleep together. Next day, she's out of there, leaving Prythian. Kind of like not a good move. If you think she felt bad before, you're gonna sleep with her, say I love you, and then send her away? Oh my gosh, I'd be screaming, crying, throwing up. Interesting choice of timeline there. But anyway, she's being pushed into the carriage, she's saying goodbye, and Lucien comes around and he says to Tamlin, I thought you were smarter than this. You're not even gonna give her a few more days, just a few before you send her back to that human cesspit. So he knows what the curse is. She needs a few more days and she probably would have said I love you back. Keep in mind, the first time that he has said I love you was last night. So Feyre, her background is that no one says I love you. That's a very new thing for her. These are new emotions. She's still like grappling with everything and he's sending her away. So once she's gone, there's no way of breaking the curse. And then the parting goodbye quote, Tamlin smiled at me one last time. I love you, he said, and stepped away. Ready for the most infuriating thing you've ever read in your entire life? I should say it. I should say those words, but they got stuck in my throat because of what he had to face, because he might not find me again despite his promise, because beneath it all, he was an immortal and I would grow old and die. And maybe he meant it now, and perhaps last night had been as altering for him as it had been for me, but I would not become a burden to him. I would not become another weight pressing upon his shoulders, so I said nothing as the carriage moved. So their final words to each other was literally, I love you, and she says nothing. How is that not more of a burden, first of all? So break down logically, he's like, I love you, I'm sending you off to save you. So he doesn't even know if she loves him back, but he's doing like, I'm gonna go full team Tamlin in this moment and say, Tamlin is trying in the grand scheme of things to protect her by sending her away because he loves her, and she doesn't even say I love you back. She also doesn't break the curse because of this. Like, this was kind of his like, kind of begging moment, I love you. He's like whispering it to her. She's like, cool, and leaves. Yeah, except when you're reading the book, you don't know why that's so dramatic, but you're about to get caught up on everything. We are pretty much only halfway, a little over halfway. We're at this low point right here. We're about to slow down, go back to hometowns. This is The Bachelor, we're going to hometowns, and then it's gonna pick up. So we're about to just boom, 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 buckle in, here we go. We're going under the mountain. Feyre goes home and finds out that the glamour is stuck, and everyone's like, oh, I hope you had a really good time at your great aunt's. Thanks for all this money you brought in from her. No one really questions it, but Nesta. Nesta actually reveals that the glamour did not work on her. So Nesta remembers everything. The beast breaking in, her being taken away to Prithian, and Nesta actually went after her sister. So as much as we like hate Nesta and she's so mean to her, she's the only one who somehow this glamour didn't work on her and went after Feyre to try to save her. In the end, she like wasn't able to find her or whatever, so obviously she didn't find her. And then she's like, you have to tell me everything. So Feyre kind of spills all the tea to Nesta, and then Nesta asks her to teach her how to paint. So they do have a little bit of a sister bonding moment, but we're still really pissed at Nesta. Like we don't really like her. But this whole time Feyre can't stop thinking about what the cereal had said. The cereal said, stay with the High Lord and you'll be safe. And like I said, that line is said in like every chapter. So this is like ringing in her head all the time. We also find out from Elaine, she like comes in and is like, hey guys, you know Claire Better? Yeah, her house burned down, her whole family died, they can't find her body. Feyre's like, what? Hold on. Claire Better? Like the Claire Better that we know, like from here? And like, yeah. So this is a little shocker, traumatizing moment because that was the name that Feyre had given Rhysand. Ooh, that's a big yikes. Essentially, she's like, I have to go. I need to save Tamlin, which is so funny in hindsight. He's a High Lord. He turns into a beast, and she, human girl, going to find and save Faye. Interesting. So she warns her family, there's this blight, like stay safe, kind of be ready, but I gotta go. And Nesta actually says some interesting stuff like, go, do better, be better than us, we don't need you here, don't come back. And that's how they say goodbye. So then Feyre goes to Prithian in the Spring Court to Tamlin's Manor, and nobody's there. And it's like torn up. The only person, I feel so bad I don't have a picture, is Alice. Alice spills all the tea to Feyre. So now as a reader, you're for the first time exposed to what the blight and Amarantha actually is. So let me give you guys the background of what everything is, just in case you forgot. King Hybern, who we'll learn about later in the series, is an evil guy who doesn't like humans and wants them to become slaves again. So there is a treaty put in place that protects humans from the Fae. So Fae can't take them and enslave them anymore, and they kind of just have to stay separated. But he wants to revert back to the old ways. Now, Amarantha had a sister who was in love with a human. This human's name was Joran. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. And her sister fell in love with him. He used her sister and actually ended up killing her sister. So Amarantha as a whole says, I hate all humans. So she's Team Hybern. She actually wants to get rid of the treaty, and she's kind of just bad to the bone all around. I mean, look what she does to her own Fae people. So Hybern had sent her, I think it was like 100 years ago, and then while she was doing her spying, she was like kind of like working with Tamlin's family, so they knew each other. She was in love with him, and Tamlin was like, I would rather bed a human than be with you. Amarantha took that unbelievably serious. So one night she invited all of them, all as in the 7 High Lords of the courts, and drugged them. This took away most of their power, gave it to Amarantha, and she put a curse on Tamlin that he would have 50 years to get a human who hates Fae in her heart to kill a Fae and then fall in love with him. So she has to hate Fae, kill a Fae, and then say the words, I love you, to Tamlin. Kind of just as like a little revenge, like, oh, you don't love me, you'd rather bet a human, well, then you're gonna have to in order to free your people. Part of this curse was the Spring Court having to wear these masks. This picture has Lucian with his off, but he's holding it. And then everybody else is stuck under the mountain. You're caught up. There's the tea. So essentially, Feyre not saying I love you to Tamlin that one night because she was all in her head about it literally locked in everybody's fate. They will be stuck under the mountain with little to no powers, no way to stop Amarantha, and in turn no way to stop King Hybern, which will affect all the mortals eventually. So Feyre, knowing all this, asks Alice to take her under the mountain, and Alice takes her, but she does call her stupid for not saying I love you. She literally says, you stupid girl, because all she had to do was say I love you, even though everybody knows that she loves Tamlin, she didn't say it. Alice takes her to where the entrance to Under the Mountain is, and all the advice she has is just don't make bargains. Bargains in Prithian, in the Fae world, are like magic. They bind you to that person until the bargain is fulfilled. And there are consequences if you don't follow through. Feyre's first thing when she gets under the mountain is to go to Tamlin and say, I love you. So she's like, there, boom, broke the curse. Amarantha's like, haha, you dumb little girl. The curse is over. So when Tamlin had sent her away, there were 3 days left. And in those 3 days, she was in the mortal world, and Amarantha collected all of the spring court, put them under the mountain. So that doesn't work anymore. No more curse. It's done. It's fulfilled. She can't break it. A little side note that is so funny. When Feyre sees Amarantha for the first time after hearing all this, she's like, oh, she's kind of ugly. It is so funny. Like, after all that, she's like, oh yeah, I see why Tamlin didn't want to be with her. Like, she's not very pretty. And it's just funny because she's like human, and humans are kind of like less attractive than Fae in the first place. So that's kind of like a really big diss. Another thing is that when she goes under the mountain, Claire Better's body is brutally assaulted and like hanging on the wall as like a trophy of Amarantha, because Amarantha thought that was Feyre. It's really sad. It makes her feel sick and she wants to throw up. She's like obviously really pissed about it. This is basically it's not her fault. I'm not gonna blame her, but she feels really bad because she gave Claire's name. So after Alice says, hey girlie, don't make any bargains, Feyre runs under the mountain and says, let's make a bargain. First things first, she goes for it. I think it was actually Amarantha who proposed the bargain. She said, I'll make a bargain with you. I'll give you 3 tasks, and if you complete all 3 tasks, then everybody can be free and the curse is broken. But also, I'm gonna give you a riddle, and if you solve the riddle, everybody can go free from the curse immediately. She says yes to all of this, then everybody beats her up. All of like Amarantha's little minions just beat the crap out of her. Then she's sent down into her cell where she'll be staying because each task will be once a month. Then Lucien comes in and heals her from all of the wounds that she had gotten, and then they get taken back into the throne room and we meet Rhys again. Mr. Haughty, High Lord of the Night Court, comes in and we actually get the riddle for the first time. And I want to say it out loud to you guys. For anyone who hasn't heard it, just let me know if you guys can solve it and then I'll let you know my thoughts about it. So here it is. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. My ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. I read this and said, oh, good luck, girly. I have no idea. I'm not a riddle person. I'd actually just read The Hobbit before I read this book, so like that's filled with riddles. I didn't get a single one of those right. I certainly wasn't gonna get this right. I also am more of an immersive reader, and I was like, not my problem. Good luck, Feyre. That's not on me. Have fun with your little riddle. So I just read right past it. There is a lot of discourse about it because, spoiler for the end, the answer is love. The answer to the riddle to break the curse is once again love. I love you. Love. It's all love. Amarantha is not a lover girl. Or she is. She's like a romantic, I guess. Because everything is about love. Very, very interesting. Interesting stuff there. Now we are in the last 100 pages. We're here. We're about to just go up, up, up. So let's go. Her first task is to defeat a worm in the throne room. The throne room was like transformed into a muddy tunnel. If you're wondering what the worm looked like, it is this. Not the SpongeBob worm like everybody says. This. There's Feyre down there. Terrifying. So she's chasing this little thing around, and it's like really scary. She actually almost gets stuck and dies. It's chasing her around. But remember, she's like a hunter. She used to hunt and provide for her family. So she realizes that it can't see, it can only smell, and that's how it is tracking her. So she kind of gets away from it and starts building a trap. Then she covers herself in like the feces mud nastiness, is waiting for it to come to like catch it in the trap. But she looks down for a second and Lucien actually yells because she can't figure out where the worm is. She's covered in all this stuff. She looked down, she lost the worm. Lucien says, on your left, and she is able to kill it because of Lucien's little hint there. Also, when she was doing all of that, everybody in the crowd was like, what is she doing? She's stupid. And Rhys is like, oh my gosh, slay, she's building a trap. Lucien helps her, she kills the worm, and one person in the entire throne room is excited and like cheering for her because that person had bet on her. Everybody would bet, and everybody bet on the worm, and he bet on her. That's so cutesy. Or is it? And then Feyre faints. Now, this whole interaction actually was extremely traumatizing. Remember, this is what she's fighting. She has broken bones. She has a fever. She's actually been rotting in the mud, feces all over her for days. I was almost throwing up reading this, so I can't imagine how she feels. And she's literally dying. She has a fever. She has an infection. She has broken bones and no way to heal herself. And it's not like Amarantha is going to help her. So she's just dying in her cell. So that's where Rhys comes. Now, this is kind of a controversial part of the book, but let's just get into it. He offers her a bargain. He like kind of grabs her arm. She's disgusted and like tries to pull away, and he actually like breaks her arm even worse, which is really sad. I still don't really understand that, but he offers her a bargain that he will heal her completely if she comes with him 2 weeks out of each month after the whole situation. And she's like, absolutely not. I hate you. I would never do that. And she's kind of thinking Lucian will come help her again. This is where Rhysand explains that like Lucian is actually in trouble and he has no way of coming to help you. You could also die in the next like hour. So if you say no, you die. If you say yes, okay, you spend half your life with me, but at least you're alive. So she actually kind of barters him down to 1 week out of every month, and they agree, and boom, second bargain. Not listening to Alice. Love that. He also is like, hey, by the way, thanks for making me money because I bet on you. So it's kind of a like interesting situation. In this time, we do still think he's like evil. We're confused why he's helping her. But in hindsight, he's doing everything to help her and give her motivation in like a weird, twisted way. Keep in mind, he's lived the last 50 years as Amarantha's whore. He's also stuck under the curse. And he basically offers her this bargain to say, I think you're actually going to survive. I think you're going to win all of this. He heals her because he wants her to win, obviously. He tries to help her out, and he's pretty much the only one who's like on her team. Whenever they make this bargain, we find out later why this is, but in the night court, if you make a bargain, you get a tattoo. So remember, she made a bargain with Amarantha, no tattoo. Makes a bargain with Rhys, she gets a full sleeve tattoo with an eyeball on her palm. So this is like, everybody's gonna know that she just made a bargain with someone in the night court, aka Rhys. And Feyre realizes that Rhys really just hates Tamlin, and she thinks he's kind of doing all this to show Tamlin like, your girl has to do everything I say, she has a bargain with me, she's gonna have to live with me, all this stuff to like piss off Tamlin. Then she kind of has to like do chores for some reason. The first chore is mopping up mud with a muddy bucket, and actually Lucian's mom comes and does a little magic to help her out because she had helped Lucian previously. So it's like, there we're repaid, thank you for helping my son. Which is kind of an interesting little tidbit because once again, Lucian's from the autumn court, but he ran away to the spring court. So we're like, oh, is Lucian's mom like actually not evil even though his dad is? We're a little confused, but we don't get a lot of lore there. And we move past that. Her second one is to go into a room and pick like lentils out of a fireplace. And lo and behold, whose room is it? Rhysand. So Rhysand walks in, he's like, oh, hey girly, what are you doing in here? He always has like a fun time with her because he's like playfully, you could say like flirting or just like messing around with her. And his idea is like, this is gonna make her feel like, you know, get her mind off of things, get her to laugh a little bit. Even if she hates him, at least she's like trying and not just like giving up, because a lot of, you know, dying or surviving these tasks is mental. The vibes we get from Rhysand is he's a bad boy, but he's kind of hot. Now, Feyre would never admit that, but remember, she is our narrator, and the words that she uses to describe him is always like sensual words, if that makes sense. And of course, his words are always just so like playful with her, like I said. So here's a quote from him. As wonderful as it is to see you, Feyre darling, Rhysand said, sprawled on the bed, his head propped up by a hand. Do I want to know why you're digging through my fireplace? They do get to chat for a little bit, and part of this chat, she actually asks him, hey, can you solve the riddle for me? And Rhys loves that she's trying so hard. He's like, wow, that was really bold of you to even ask. I unfortunately cannot help you because Amarantha basically put a curse on all them using her magic that they can't tell her the answer to the riddle. But because of this, he actually asked his people to like not give her any more chores and stuff. So he kind of is like, oh, that got some points in my head. Like, I'll help you out, girly. She also uses this to ask about Claire. She's like, you knew what I looked like and you lied, and now Claire is dead. Why did you do that? And she also asked like why he was able to just go out and about when everybody's stuck under the mountain on the like fire night for the Great Rite. And He says, Amarantha plays her games and I play mine. It gets rather boring down here day after day. And then she's like, she let you out on fire night and somehow you got out to put that head in the garden. She asked me to put that head in the garden. As for fire night, he looked me up and down. I had my reasons to be there. Do not think, Feyre, that it did not cost me. So we always get really like vague answers from Rhys about stuff. We don't really know why he's like sleeping with Amarantha, helping out Amarantha. We're really confused. All we know is that he's hot. He's kind of helping and protecting her, but he's also like on Amarantha's team. So he's just like a really complex character, you could say, in this book. Now he has his night court girlies go help her, and they're gonna always kind of be there for her going forward to help her get ready and all this stuff. They put her in a really skimpy night court-esque dress, which barely covers anything, so she is like on display. And then there's this like paint all over her, and she's like, why am I wearing this? Rhys says it's because there is a party. Feyre is going to be basically his +1, and he wants the paint so he can tell if anybody has touched her, so he knows exactly where she's been touched. Definitely some interesting stuff about to happen. Some questionable stuff as well. Rhys brings her to the throne room and tells Amarantha and Tamlin about the bargain, and they both get mad about it. Amarantha's pissed that Rhys is helping her and is like, I want her to die in these tasks and you keep healing her and giving her help. Like, why are you doing this? And then Tamlin's like, that's my girl. But he doesn't actually say anything. Keep in mind, this entire time, Tamlin has not said a single word to Feyre. He pretty much pretends like she's not there, even when she's standing right in front of him. He is sitting next to Amarantha's throne and just doesn't even look at her. Keep that in mind. Then Rhys makes Feyre drink the fairy wine, which once again is super strong, so she's basically like blackout drunk. The next day, she wakes up and sees that there are handprints on her from that paint. She can tell where she has been touched. She does see that she's not been touched anywhere inappropriately, so she's actually like, okay, I don't feel violated. I'm hungover, but whatever. Lucian then comes in the next day and is like, you were dancing sensually all over Rhysand, or like sitting on him like the whole night. You can remember Tamlin's there, so for sure interesting. But we also find out that when Lucian had been like, on your left during the first task, Amarantha punished him with 20 lashes, so he would not have been able to come save her. So in this sense, we're like, okay, it's a good thing she made the bargain or she actually would have died. Then Feyre asks how they can break the curse on Tamlin. Remember how I said he's just sitting there? There's no curse. Lucian's like, what curse? There's no curse. Lucian explains that this is a strategy because Amarantha obviously knows Feyre loves him, but if Tamlin were to show too much interest in Feyre, it could really piss off Amarantha and make the tasks harder. She could just instantly kill Feyre. Like, there's a lot going on. We don't know what will go through her head. So this is their strategy. Then we have a whole month of getting drunk and dancing on Rhysand. It flies by, and before you know it, it is time for her next task. She does say something kind of about, I think it was like about the night court, and he gets his feelings hurt, and she realizes that the only reason she knows his feelings are hurt is not because of how he looks, but she can literally feel his emotion. And she like looks at her like bargain tattoo, looks at him, she's like, oh, this cannot be good. Like, I actually feel what he's feeling. Whoa! Yeah, that comes in handy though. So it is time for our next task. But before the task, Rhys has to help Amarantha. There was like someone from the courts who had escaped, and she's like, can you get into his mind, basically turn it to mush to make him like go crazy and like give me the information I need from him. And he actually just kills him. Now we do get a little bit of like a inside scoop from what Feyre sees and everything, that this was a mercy killing. He could have completely exposed everything about him, so he didn't tell the truth about this guy who escaped, and instead of turning him crazy, he killed him. Amarantha's like, I didn't tell you to do that, and he's like, oh, I got carried away. He's keeping up this facade of like being super evil, but it was actually like a good thing. So Feyre's kind of a little bit confused about Rhysand, and so are we, because why is he helping so much? Why does he care? I thought he was evil. Then her task comes, and this is what I call the I can't read task. She is in this like thing with spikes coming down on her, so once they get low enough, they'll just crush and kill her. Boom, done. Lucian is also there because he's in trouble for helping her, and Amarantha knows that she cares about Lucian. So Lucian will die, Feyre will die if she fails this task. The way that that she can win is by reading a riddle, all these riddles, solving the riddle, and pulling the right lever. There's 3 levers, and if you solve the riddle, it tells you the number of the levers. Lucian's like, are you actually kidding me? He's screaming, but she can't really hear too much of what he's saying because he's kind of far away. And this was the most irritating thing I've ever read. This is Favor's mind. She can't read. There's 3 levers. She says, 2. 2 is a lucky number because that was like Tamlin and me, just 2 people. 1 had to be bad because 1 was like Amarantha or the Adder, solitary beings. 1 was a nasty number and 3 was too much. It was 3 sisters crammed into a tiny cottage, hating each other until they choked on it, until it poisoned them. So she's gonna pull the second lever because 2 is just like me and Tamlin. Few things here. That's just idiotic and stupid. Why would that be Amarantha's way of thinking? If anything, it should be 1 because there's 1 like Amarantha. This is her thing. There's also 3 of them. Are you kidding? 2 like me and Tamlin. What about your bestie buddy here, Lucian, who's been there this whole time, who's there dying with you? No, it's just me and Tamlin. Ugh. This was the most eye-roll moment of the whole book for me, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, this is actually a fun little cutesy moment. She goes to pull lever 2 and it hurts. Like she can feel, ooh, that is not a good feeling. And she realizes the pain is actually coming from her tattoo. The tattoo is from Rhys. So she's like, oh, what the heck? Like somehow through this tattoo, Rhys is helping me. She goes to pull each of them and whichever one like didn't hurt when she went to touch him was the right one. So she pulls that one. And it was the correct one. She gets out and she's like really defeated and she actually hears Rhys's voice in her head. This is big, okay? She can actually hear his voice and he says to stand tall and don't look weak, look her in the eyes, like don't make her feel powerful, and she obeys. Then we go back down to the prison and Rhys comes down and she's like crying. She's feeling really defeated. He like licks her tears to try to like distract her. He makes fun of her for not being able to read, but it works. It does distract her. So Rhys is kind of just our distraction this whole book. Like he's just here to keep her alive. And she says, it took me a long while to realize that Rhysand, whether he knew it or not, had effectively kept me from shattering completely. So the only reason that she's not just like offing herself essentially or giving up is because of Rhysand. The party starts again. She's drinking wine, going back to the dancing stuff. And then one night she overhears that Hybern is gonna attack the mortal realm and she pretty much accepts her death. She's like, I'm just a human girl. I've already gone through 2 tasks. They were hard. I'm probably gonna die here. And my whole family's probably gonna die too because of this whole King Hybern thing. When suddenly, as she's like on the brink of just giving up, she hears music. This music puts her basically in a trance and like livens her up again. She is on a struggle bus. She is the epitome of depressed. She has gone through a lot. She's traumatized and this music just fills her head and kind of like revives her. The music is super slay. And then we have one more party. She's covered in paint and she's waiting for Rhys because Rhys was like talking to this other Fae girl or something. And she realizes Tamlin is standing next to her. And this is like in the throne room. And then he just kind of is like, walks away. And then she kind of like looks around and is like, okay, no one's watching, and just like follows. But she goes a different way and they meet in this like room off of the throne room. Whenever he was standing next to her, here's a quote, his fingers brushed mine, a line of fire went through me, burning me so badly that my eyes pricked with tears. Follows him. Somehow nobody sees them. And what does Tamlin do? They haven't seen each other like alone and she thought he was gonna curse, trance thing. They literally have not talked, have not said I love you, nothing. And Tamlin says nothing. They have a little makeout sesh. He's ready to just get it on right then and there. That's what he wants from her after not seeing her or talking to her for all this time. So here's a little quote. Immediately after seeing each other in this little private room, I tossed away his belt and started fumbling for his pants. Someone coughed. Shameful, Rhysand purred. Ooh! Rhysand tells Tamlin that he needs to leave because if they get caught, this is going to be really bad. He says Amarantha would be greatly aggrieved if she knew her little warrior was dallying with the human help. So Amarantha remembers in love with Tamlin. Tamlin just ran off and is like trying to hook up with her in this like side room. If Amarantha were to walk in, they'd be done for. Like this would not be good. So this is awkward and like weird and Rhysand's like, just leave Tamlin, but at the same time, it's technically protecting them. So he obeys. Rhysand's like, get out of here. And he's like, fine, and like leaves. So once again, he's like doing what he says. This is also another like really questionable scene. He basically throws himself onto Feyre, and this is technically to protect her. She has handprints all over her intimate parts and just everywhere because Tamlin had came in there and like touched her all over. She has paint on. So Amarantha, if she were to walk in, would see the handprints and be like, who did that? So Rhysand basically puts himself on her. She doesn't like it. He starts kissing her and he's like touching her to like cover up the handprints. And it's all just to throw off Amarantha, because then in a second, Tamlin and Amarantha come into the room together and she's like, wow, I knew it wouldn't be long before you wanted to like be with this stupid human. Tamlin looks pissed though, so we don't know if Tamlin's like just pissed, because that would obviously be weird to walk in on, or if it's like he kind of knew Rhys was covering up for him and is like, I'm pissed, but whatever. He's just mad. We don't know his thoughts, and it's just really awkward vibes all around. So then Rhys kind of just sends her to her cell for the night. And then we get kind of like a vulnerable moment. Rhysand later comes down into the cell and is super open with Feyre. He tells her that he's been doing this all to protect her, and even though it seems like a weird twisted way, this is the best way that he can work in his role to help Feyre. He wants out of the curse. He wants her to survive. He's team Feyre. And when you think about it, I mean, Lucian's helped a little bit, but Rhys is the only one helping this girl in this impossible position. He talks about how he's really tired and lonely and tells her about how he actually is Amarantha's whore, and that's not a good thing, and how Tamlin will kill Amarantha once he has all of his powers back. So if she can win the task tomorrow, which is her last one, and they all get their powers back, they'll turn into beast mode and kill Amarantha, and that'll be good for everybody. So Rhys is actually doing a lot of this to really like taunt Tamlin into getting so mad that as soon as this curse is broken, he doesn't even think twice about killing Amarantha. So it's kind of like Rhys is just 3 steps ahead, thinking of the best scenario of the situation. And although it's kind of dark and twisted how he does it, it's really for the good of everyone. And then he also kind of talks about how he's keeping Feyre numb because this would be a really long 3 months. So giving her all this wine and just keeping her distracted is actually helping her. And then Feyre's like, yeah, okay, interesting. Why did you let me bring down that bargain? It was supposed to be 2 weeks. We agreed on 1 week. You didn't have to do that. Like, you're in charge here. You're the only reason I'm alive. And he basically just says, yeah, I know I didn't have to, and walks away. So now we're on to our third task. Things are about to get crazy. The book is almost over. Her task is to stab 3 fairies. Of course it is. Feyre does not want to do this, but she knows that she has to do this. At this point, she's already in. It's at the third task. If she doesn't do this, everyone's trapped in the curse. So they bring out the 3 fae. They have like things covering their faces, and so they pull off the first one. She sees that it's this fae, and she says, I wanted to get out of my body. I had to escape the stain of what I'd done. I had to get out. I couldn't endure the blood on my hands, the sticky warmth between my fingers. She had stabbed the fae, literally just killed him right then and there. And this fae was like screaming, please don't do it. She stabs him, and that's what she says. Then they pull off the hood of the second one. It gets really, really dark and twisted, okay? It's this girl, and this girl's basically looking at her like, I know this is for the good of everybody. Just please do it quickly. Like, those are the vibes between them. And she says, I wanted to fall to my knees to beg her forgiveness, to tell her that her death wouldn't be for naught. And she is just battling. Do I have to do this? Yes, I already killed one. I have to keep going. Like, this is really hard for Feyre. Okay, she's not like an evil person. She's not a murderer. It's really difficult for her. Then they pull off the hood of the third one. And keep in mind, earlier she had saw Tamlin sitting next to Amarantha, and she's like looking at Tamlin like, I'm really about to do this task in front of the man I love. They pull off the third hood, and it's Tamlin. So it was actually a big trick. I think it was the adder like disguised himself as Tamlin with magic, and Tamlin was actually the third fae. So Amarantha's like, I know she's not gonna kill Tamlin, so we'll just put Tamlin in there, and then like, boom, done, she can't kill him. So she's really battling killing the one person that she loves and she's here for the good of everyone, to set everybody free. Of course, she does have more than one friend. She's in love with Tamlin, but now she's kind of befriended Rhysand. She obviously loves Lucian. I mean, Alice is stuck under this curse. Her mortal sisters could be affected unexpected in the future. Like, she doesn't know how this will play out. So it's like, do I kill the one person who I've ever loved in my entire life, the one person who's actually been nice to me and shown me love? Do I kill him and let everyone free, or keep everyone trapped so I can maybe keep him? But in my head, I thought this was kind of stupid because, like, first of all, she already killed the Two Fae. Yes, this would be super hard, but if she doesn't do it, then Amarantha's just gonna kill her or make her like a slave or something. So in hindsight, it's the only option. But Feyre kind of knows that it's the only option. So then we get this quote. Alice had said something to help me. A final part of the curse. A part they couldn't tell me. A part that would aid me. And all she'd been able to tell me was to listen. To listen to what I'd heard, as if I'd already learned everything I needed. So in her head, she's like, there has to be a way out of this. Come on, think. I don't want to kill Tamlin. And then she thinks about how Alice said to listen. And that's when it all really starts to click for her. She thinks of these few instances where she had overheard them, but she wasn't supposed to be hearing them. And here are 2 quotes. For someone with a heart of stone, yours is certainly soft these days. And then she says, Amarantha would never risk killing him because she knew I couldn't kill him. So now she's thinking, okay, I overheard multiple people say that Tamlin had a heart of stone, which we thought was a figure of speech. And then she's like, Amarantha is in love with Tamlin. She would not let Tamlin die. And she's like, oh my gosh. He literally, not figuratively, has a heart of stone. And she stabs him in the heart, which it was true. He does have a heart of stone. So it kind of like shocks him. Like he's like, oh, like it still hurts, but he heals right away from the stab wound because he's Fae. He's kind of healing up, and Amarantha is pissed. And she just starts saying a ton of nasty things to Feyre, calling her every name in the book. So she stabs him, he's healing, and we get this quote from Amarantha, because that should break the curse, right? She finished all 3 tasks, we're good to go. Why is not everyone not free? Like, it's kind of a confusing moment. She won, someone said in the crowd. Free them, another echoed, but Amarantha's face blanched, her features contorting until she looked truly serpentine. I'll free them when I see fit. Feyre didn't specify when I had to free them, just that I had to, at some point. Perhaps when you're dead. She finished with a hateful smile. You assumed when I said instantaneous freedom regarding the riddle, it applied to the trials too, didn't you? Foolish, stupid, human. Then they kind of like yell at each other. Amarantha's calling her like every name in the book. Tamlin's trying to like heal. So they're all still stuck in the curse because she just has to let them go eventually, but not right now. Then, because she just hates Feyre, she starts killing her. She literally, remember Claire Better's body was up there like destroyed? That's what she's doing to Feyre. She uses her magic to like throw her around, break literally every single bone in her body. This is the most painful, traumatizing thing Feyre's ever had to go through. She can't breathe. There's like blood in her throat, and she actually yells like her last words. She says, love. The answer to the riddle is love. And as I said, she's on the brink of death, but she just solved the riddle. And remember, Amarantha said if she solves the riddle, that's instantaneous freedom. So they should all be instantly free right now because she said the answer to the riddle. A lot of nasty things are said, a lot of drama goes down. They are free, but to our surprise, our main character Feyre here, Amarantha actually kills her, snaps her neck. She's dead. Fully 100%. That wasn't like a little like fun writing. No, she's dead. Now through all of this, Rhysand had been thrown on a wall against like the other side of the room with her magic, and Tamlin's still trying to heal. And as all of her bones are being broken, she can see herself from Rhysand's point of view. She's like, what the heck? She literally watches herself die. And when she looked at Tamlin, that's how she knew what the answer to the riddle was. She was like, oh my gosh, it's love. So she's dead. And then she can see her dead body through someone else's point of view, and we learn that's Rhys's point of view, and her like neck is broken and her body's twisted. It looks like super like it shouldn't, you know, she realizes she's dead essentially. She sees from this point of view Tamlin turn into a beast and literally bite out Amarantha's throat, so Amarantha's now dead. She realizes she's looking through Rhysand's point of view, and all the High Lords are kind of gathering around Feyre, and they start dropping this like magic into her one by one. Tamlin gives her the last little drops. She can see herself from this like weird point of view, and then she's in this like black weird area, and there is a golden string that she uses to follow to her body. So she was kind of debating, like, do I go? Where am I? Sees this string and follows the string. She wakes up and realizes that everything is completely different from like the way that she sees, the way she smells, the colors, everything's completely different. And this is where we find out that there was a huge spoiler on page 1 of the book. Feyre is now Fae. Yes, Feyre turns into a Fae, but not just any Fae, she's high Fae. But Miss Girl is traumatized, so she's like kind of stumbling in her body because it's new, she doesn't know how to work it. She actually died, she saw her own dead body. She just went through a lot of trauma just with the trials in general. Tamlin's mask fell off. She gets to see his face. It's like, oh my gosh, she's just as hot as I thought. We're like, yay, it's happy ever after, but actually she's super traumatized. And on top of everything, her overwhelming feeling is guilt. She just killed 2 Fae, and in her head, she's like, they didn't need to die. I figured out the answer to the riddle, and I'm so stupid. If I would have found it out sooner, you know, I wouldn't have had to take 2 lives. So that really just is a lot for her. And then after everything, she has to stay under the mountain for a little bit because they have to do some meetings. And remember, she has to stay with the High Lord to be safe. So she's staying with Tamlin before they can go back to the Spring Court. They're doing a bunch of meetings and figuring out next steps. And then in the middle of the night, she feels a little tug. So remember, she can kind of like feel Rhysand through this like bargain thing they have, the tattoo, whatever. And so she follows it. And on the balcony is Rhysand. She asks him why he helped, and this is what he says. I stared at the nose I'd seen bleeding only hours before. The violet eyes had been so filled with pain. Why? I asked. He knew what I meant and shrugged, because when legends get written, I didn't want to be remembered for standing on the sidelines. I want my future offspring to know that I was there, that I fought against her till the end, even if I couldn't do anything useful. I blinked, this time not at the brightness of the sun, because, he went on, his eyes locked with mine, I didn't want you to fight alone or die alone. And for a moment, I remembered that fairy who had died in our foyer and how I told Tamlin the same thing. Thank you, I said, my throat tight. So remember when that Fae came in with his wings ripped out and she held his hand because she wouldn't want to die alone? Rhys obviously doesn't know that, and he thinks the same way. He's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to die alone either. So he was really there for Feyre this whole time, and even in the end when she was literally dead. He locked eyes on mine, wide and wild, and his nostrils flared. Shock, pure shock, flashed across his features at whatever he saw on my face, and he stumbled back a step. Actually stumbled. What is, I began. He disappeared, simply disappeared, not a shadow in sight, into the crisp air. So something happened, and we actually have no idea in this book. But remember how like evil he is, he's strong, he's powerful, he's High Lord of the Night Court, he made Tamlin bow, all this stuff. Everybody kind of obeys him. He looks at her and is like, he like stumbles back. So we're like, oh my gosh, super powerful guy, stumbling back because of Feyre? She is high Fae now. So yeah, that's all we get there. And that was their goodbye. We're like, okay, odd character. At the end of this book, we're unsure about how we feel about Rhys. But we just want Tamlin and Feyre to run off into the sunset together, and they kind of start to do that. They go back to the Spring Court, and this is our very last line of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I stepped out of Tamlin's arms and kissed him softly. Tomorrow, there would be tomorrow, and an eternity to face what I had done, to face what I shredded into pieces inside myself while under the mountain. But for now, for today, let's go home, I said, and took his hand. So it ends with her being racked by guilt, but now she's high Fae, so she's gonna live forever. So she's like, okay, that's a lot to deal with, but we can deal with that tomorrow. For now, let's run off into the sunset back to the Spring Court. And she actually calls the Spring Court home. And that, my friends, is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I love it, love it, love it, love it. The last 100 pages, so many characters with so many ways of thinking about them, and I have so many thoughts. So I know it's already a long video, but I want to share my thoughts and drop some tea about the characters, the romance, all of that. So let's hop into it. Here's our outline for the rest of the video. I'll try to fly through this. First, I want to talk about a few plot things now that we have the whole book down. The first thing is that Tamlin had 50 years to get this curse solved. And I'm not going to sit here and hate on him because at the end of this book, and we'll talk about him, I do like him. I warmed up to him. But he also could have tried so much harder to get Feyre to fall in love with him. And it just really frustrated me that he took so long to do it. Also, plot-wise, I just hate how slow it was. I think we could have added some more fun and like crazy stuff before the last 100 pages. I really didn't fall in love with the book until after the Naga fighting scene. That's when it like hooked me, but I think we could have got hooked sooner if there was more action, but it's fine because every other book is amazing. Lucian and Feyre's friendship to me is the cutest thing ever. Before I started to like Tamlin, I was like, wait, Feyre should just ditch Tamlin and go for Lucian. Like, he seems like a hottie. He's fun. Like, their friendship is so cute after he got over the whole wanting her to die thing. I was all for that. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that it didn't become romance because their friendship is so cute. And throughout the series, I feel like I started to like friendships more than romances. Like, I don't know, they're both good. I already ranted about this, but why is Feyre so afraid to let people know she likes to paint? She really kept this as hidden as she could for the longest time for no reason. The whole Calamar, whatever that thing was, the Great Riot, super weird, okay? And like, we really only touch on that subject one other time in the series, and it just like, I feel like the whole purpose was just to show like that moment between her and Tamlin and for her to meet Rhys. So I guess it's fine, but it was just like a weird thing to throw in there. The amount of memes that came out of Tamlin playing the fiddle was hilarious, so I'm glad that was in there. And then Feyre just not saying I love you and then not being able to solve the riddle, it's just funny. And I think one of my favorite plot things that was used in this book was Feyre not being able to read. That is so funny. For what? For no reason. As a dyslexic person, I felt her. Okay, obviously I can read, but it's a struggle. And Feyre just can't read. It is funny. It bleeds into the next book. It's great. I love that. And that's that. So let's dive into the characters and how I feel about them. You guys obviously already know because I've been ranting. I found Feyre to be super annoying most of the book. I didn't really like her until she went under the mountain, but I'm glad because of that. She has amazing character growth, even just by the end of book 1. She just keeps growing and growing from there. So I am full team Feyre. I love Feyre. I actually, after reading the whole series, think I resonate and relate the most to Feyre. She is me, I am her. So now looking back on all the things I find annoying about her, I'm like, ooh, I've done that. But I really do love her. She grows on me. And by the end, she's just like so strong, even though she's been through a lot, and she really fights for kind of what she believes in and who she loves and holds on. And I love that. I love that for her. She's a great character. Now, I do keep in mind that she is 19 compared to all these like hundreds of years old. So at the end of the day, she's amazing. She's so young and doing great. Nesta, we just hate her, okay? She has one kind of like redeeming moment in this book where she kind of listens to Feyre and then tells her to go do better with her life, but we still just, like, the sisters were just, they're not it, okay? They did nothing for Feyre. They provided nothing for the family. By the end of this book, we kind of forget they exist. And Elaine, a lot of people are like, oh, it's fine what Elaine did. Like, she's just a cute little innocent girl. No, she's not. She is also Feyre's older sister, and even though she's like ditzy or whatever, she could step up and she doesn't, and it really frustrates me. I would argue that I actually think Elaine is worse than Nesta, but we'll get into that later. For now, we'll just move on. Daddy Archeron, the dad, he actually doesn't get a name. They don't, like, Sarah J. Maas just said he doesn't need a name, he's not important, don't worry about him. Actually awful, literally hate him, got his family into poverty, not helping them survive. Like, if it wasn't for Feyre, they all would have died, and none of them say thank you, none of them care. He's so bad he doesn't get a name, and I stand that. Okay, Lucian. I think overall, in this book, Lucian was my favorite character. I feel like he's a pretty dynamic character, and maybe people don't talk about it enough, but like, he has a really rough past, and towards the end, after he's over the whole let's kill Feyre thing once they're friends, he wants to help her, but like he's so loyal to Tamlin. And we see a lot more character growth with him later in the series, and you know, we'll talk about that later, but for this book, like, Lucien was my favorite character. I just loved everything about him, the friendship, the loyalty, everything. And he's just there third wheeling, and we love him. Tamlin. Okay, a lot of thoughts, and I'm just gonna go off what I thought when I finished book 1. All the way through it, I was pretty iffy about Tamlin, but I started to really fall for him after kind of like Feyre started falling for him. Like, obviously we're reading from Feyre's point of view, and although I have a lot of complaints, maybe he didn't do enough, at the end of the day, I was Team Tamlin. I love him, and I wanted them to run off into the sunset together. I really started to, you know, feel for him. He is kind of in a tough position compared to like what he wanted with his life. His whole family's been killed. He had this like curse. Amarantha's like in love with him and he doesn't want it. And you know, Feyre had never been loved. She'd never been taken care of. And off the rip, he's so nice to her. And at first it freaked me out. Like, what does he want from her? And at the end of the book, I did have like one question. Like, did he ever actually love her? Because was he just doing this because he needed Feyre to fall in love with him? Because part of the curse had nothing to do with Tamlin falling in love with Feyre. That never had to happen. So I wonder if that's true, like if he truly fell in love with her. And I'm just saying my thoughts from the end of book 1. I closed book 1. Did he actually love her? And it kind of is portrayed that he did. So I'm just gonna live in that oblivion at the end of book 1 and be happy that they're together. He is our love interest, our Beauty and the Beast, and Feyre's our narrator. So if she loves him, we love him, and that's all there is. I did get the ick a couple times from him. Plus he's blonde. Yeah, that's a no for me, but it's okay. Rhys-Anne, as I mentioned, is such a dynamic character. It's really hard to like place him as a character and how we feel about him at the end of the book. He's pretty mysterious, and at the end he does just like go away. There's so many questions we have at book 1. Like their first interaction, what was that? Like him helping her in kind of a sick and twisted way, but at the end of the day, he was the only one really helping her under the mountain. So we think he's hot, we think he's mysterious, but we do obviously love Feyre and Tamlin together. And at the end of book 1, I was excited about this bargain that they made because we would get more Feyre, Rhys-Anne, and kind of maybe figure out more about Rhys, but at the same time, I was hoping that somehow they would find a way to break the bargain because I just want them to run off into the sunset together, and I'm not really interested that much in seeing what Rhys-Anne is all about. Like he had his moment, let's move on. So I don't really have too much to say at the end of book 1 about Rhys-Anne, just that like I hope he doesn't take Feyre away. I hope he just gives up on that, you know? But he's dynamic. Now moving on into the romance and smut. So I do want to say that, you know, this is an adult romance series. I don't really like reading smut, but I guess I understand why it was in this book. I don't really like the way it's written either, but it's fine. It's fine. Book 1 was pretty easy. Book 1 was easy to get through. The only book, just so you guys are aware, if you haven't read the series yet, it gets more and more spicy throughout the entire series. The last book, book 5, well, there's actually going to be more books, but book 5 was hard for me to get through because of the spice. Anyway, I rate this one like a 2 out of 5 spice level because there are like literal explicit scenes and there's like kind of just sensual language throughout the entire book. So yeah, not rating it as in I liked it or not, just like how spicy is it. There's one major like smut scene, but there's a lot of spice throughout the entire book. But as far as it goes, it's pretty tame in this book. Anyway, so romance, I've said this, I'll say it again, it felt very like out of nowhere, and I read this book in like 3 days, so it just like popped in. It was like, oh hey, here I am, we're in love now. It went from like, I'm not sure about him, I don't like him, I'm scared of him, to like, ooh, I'm in love with him. But I also can't blame Feyre because like same, like quick to fall in love. You show me a little bit of affection and I'm here for it, okay? Like I'll take it. The romance did feel odd. It felt like, oh, this has to happen for the plot because I was told it was Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I actually don't really agree with. I guess like there's some things taken from Beauty and the Beast, but overall I would not say it's a Beauty and Beast retelling. But I did kick my feet, get some butterflies, and have some little giggly moments. And when there's romance, I eat it up. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. I am a romance girly, so I will eat it up. But in comparison to the rest of the series, this one is low on the romance scale. All right, so this is where we end. So before I start spoiling the whole series, I will say that my favorite book out of the whole series is book 2. So if you read book 1 or you skipped book 1 and are watching plot summary videos, please actually read book 2. Book 2 gives me life, okay? I love book 2. I literally want to reread book 2 to make a video about it. I think about book 2 almost every day of my life. A Court of Mist and Fury has me in a chokehold that no other book ever has had me in. I will never get over it, and I highly encourage everybody to endure this book to get to book 2. So I am about to drop major spoilers for not only book 2, but the entire series. So if you haven't read all current published books up to A Court of Silver Flames, please click off. I'm giving you plenty of time. We're chatting. Get off right now of this video. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready? All right, spoilers dropping in 3, 2, 1. I can finally say it. This whole video, I've had to be like, oh my gosh, cute Tamlin. And like, I was trying not to drop too much hate on him, but I was still trying to like point out to people like, hey, why was he doing this? Why did he wait so long? We hate him. We hate him. We hate him. We hate him. He's awful. Thank you. I've been waiting so long to say that. You know what else I've been waiting so long to say? Rhysand. Kicking, screaming, crying, throwing up that I had to like pretend like we didn't like Rhysand almost this whole book. I can finally let it out. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, looking back on book 1, oh my gosh, Tamlin is the worst. He does nothing. He does the bare minimum. Yes, give us nothing. Now, I will say, for all of the Tamlin redeeming arc people, there are a lot of people out there who want Tamlin in later books to have a redeeming arc, and we get a little bit of that towards the end of the series, but we still don't like him. I have very mixed feelings about it. Kind of re-going through book 1 and thinking about what he did to her, what he does to her in book 2. I think everyone does deserve forgiveness and to move on, but I think it just needs time. I think eventually he could have maybe not a redeeming arc, but like we're okay with him. But I think we are by the end of the series. We're like, all right, whatever. There are times I do feel bad for him towards the end of the series, but not too bad because like he literally trapped Feyre. But he did it because he didn't want to like lose her. He did watch her die. Okay, I get it. But also she's like screaming, crying, throwing up from trauma and he does nothing about it. But he had trauma too. I don't know. I just, in comparison to how Rhys handles, I would say Rhys arguably went through the worst trauma out of everybody who was under the mountain, and he handles that very well and takes care of Feyre. So the redeeming arc plot of Tamlin is very questionable for me. I'm not fully on board. I'm not fully off board, but I'm sick of seeing sad Tamlin edits. I really do not care. Okay, thank you. And we do see hints of him being overprotective the entire time. I mean, him putting a glamour over everything. She's running around doing who knows what, and there's like a ton of people around and he doesn't tell her that. He's constantly putting her in positions where she's embarrassed. He doesn't teach her. He doesn't help her read. He doesn't help her with anything. Like, he really gives her nothing. So it just, yeah. Okay, are y'all ready to talk about Feyre and Rhys moments in ACOTAR? First moment. She describes everything as star. She, obviously we know about her painting on the drawers. She had painted stars and moons or whatever for herself on the bookcase, or the, what's it called, the drawers. There is a pond of starlight that she goes swimming in with Tamlin, and she eats it up, she loves it. Pretty much all of her descriptive language when she really loves something is about nighttime or the stars. And I'm like, I'm screaming, crying, throwing up, eating it up. Okay, going back through this book, knowing that they end up together and that she's High Lady of the Night Court. Why was I so annoying when I said that? Because I will cry thinking about it. There's so much. There's so much. Reread this book and think about them. I promise you'll cry. It's so good. The first calamari or whatever, she can't resist going, because Rhysand is there. Rhysand, obviously we later find out, like, he came to this party looking for her. He'd been dreaming about her. He runs into her. I've been looking for you. That's the line. I'm trying so hard to like be a sane person right now. I kind of want to reread it again. Let's pull it up. Let's pull it up. There you are. I've been looking for you, said a deep, sensual male voice I'd never heard. Screaming, crying, throwing up. Thank you. Standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. The night seemed to press in closer around him. What's a mortal woman doing here on fire night? His voice was a lover's purr that sent shivers through me, caressing every muscle and bone and nerve. As if he'd been molded from the night itself. Bye. Okay, that put me in a coma. Thank you. And there's so many more examples I could go on, but oh my gosh. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in this book. The music was actually Rhys Sand trying to keep Feyre alive. Rhys came back to the Spring Court, and reading it, we're thinking he's awful, but like hot. But later we find out the reason he was being like so weird and like in front of Tamlin and Lucia, he was nervous. He was nervous to see Feyre. He's like, that is my lover. I've been dreaming about her. He didn't know they were mates yet. He had suspicions, but oh my gosh. And then we find out that Rhys didn't even know that Claire Better was a real person, so he had no intention of killing that girl. Poor girlie. Okay, here's some other random stuff, then we'll come back to Feyre and Rhys. Nesta in book 1 calls Feyre a whore, which is so funny because if you read A Court of Silver Flame, she's the whore for getting with one guy. Okay, cool. Nesta's personality in book 1 we need to talk about because there are a lot of rumors about Nesta and like conspiracy theories, is that the right word? Where her powers kind of come from. First of all, the glamour doesn't work on her. Foreshadowing, okay, maybe potentially that she has this like something inside of her. Her entire personality just like makes sense for where we're going with A Court of Silver Flames. Also, I have to put it out there, I am a Nesta lover. I think she has the #1 best character arc, character development in the entire series. I will defend Nesta after the last book forever. I don't necessarily like want to forgive her for like what happened with Feyre and their childhood, but also Nesta was just a girl, okay, it's fine. I'm just trying every way to defend her. I don't care. Nesta becomes so amazing. Like, A Court of Silver Flames had me crying harder than any book. We'll just put it that way. Nesta also calls Feyre a pig, ignorant, and a half-wild beast. And Amarantha actually calls Feyre those exact words under the mountains. So that was kind of like a fun little thing. Claire Better is mentioned in chapter 3, so good writing on Sarah J. Maas there. The painting of the cauldron that Feyre saw, like the mural, genius, okay? A Court of Wings and Ruin, we need to know about that, so I love that. Serial saying to stay with the High Lord and you'll be safe. Which High Lord, baby? This one right here. Okay, not this guy. We should just mark him off the board. Stay with the High Lord. And then, of course, the Serial continues to drop tea throughout the series about them being mates and everything. And oh my gosh, I love the Serial so much. Serial, best character. Okay, Serial's death had me screaming, crying. I was not okay. I had to take a break from reading. Another thing is when Tamlin asks for Feyre's painting, she says that his smile was more beautiful than any pool of stars. Like, her descriptions of the nighttime and the stars and everything come out everywhere. It's not just like, oh, when they first met. Like, it's everywhere in the book that she's describing. When something is so beautiful, so profound, she describes it like the night sky. So after Rhys came back and like made Tamlin and Lucien like bow to him, her first description is, I lay in bed watching the pools of moonlight shift on the floor, which like, yeah, it's literally nighttime, but she notices pools of moonlight. Like, her descriptions are always about that. Okay, another big slay is when Lucien's like, yeah, try to go get this cereal because he wants her dead. And he's like, it's really, really hard. Like, no one's really done it. Like, a few people have, but it's super hard. She catches the cereal 3 times. Absolute slay. We find out more about that later in the series, but it just makes me so happy. Now, there are a lot of fan theories and stuff that I want to go over, but I feel like I almost need to make a whole video about it because there's so many. Like, I have like a whole page of them. There's stuff about like potentially the Archeron sisters' mom was actually a witch. Some people think that Elaine and Tamlin are supposed to be soulmates. Sorry, not soulmates, just mates. There's a theory that Elaine and Azriel are actually mates, but someone's blocking it and putting it on Lucien. Mor might be a witch and a traitor. Apparently, Nesta and Lucien were originally going to be mates before Sarah J. Maas like really got into reading the books, which is why on her nightstand dresser thing it was fire, hers was flowers, and Feyre was the night sky. The whole thing about who Lucien's real dad is, like, it just goes on and on and on, and I cannot wait to talk about the next book so we can bring in the I can't even remember what anything's called, like Azriel and Cassian and all them. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Anyways, I loved going over book 1 again and realizing how much it points to everything that happens in the next books. Obviously, the #1 thing being their bond when she thinks it's the bargain, but it's really the mating bond. screaming, crying, throwing up. I can't wait to talk about the next book. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoyed making it. Let me know if you like this style. I don't know if, unless you guys absolutely love this, if I'll do this again for any other book, but I just really wanted to dive into because there's so much in book 1 that you miss because you're like bored and I wanted to lay it all out for you guys. So I will see you guys in the next video, and who knows how long it'll be before I can get book 2 prepped, but A Court of Mist and Fury is my favorite book, so I can't wait to talk about it. Love you guys. See you in the next one. Bye.